So good morning, and thank you all for joining us. Welcome to our first board meeting of 2025. It's a delight to be on campus here at UMBC. As we all know, today is our first meeting since the passing of our colleague, Ron Nowashik. Ron represented the best of Maryland. He championed FSU's unique dual mission as both a student-centered teaching and learning institution committed to excellence and the economic and cultural hub of the Western Maryland region. We will miss his leadership, his insight, his dedication to student success and regional engagement. Our thoughts continue to be with his family, friends, and loved ones. As Chancellor Perman shared in his message last month, Al Dalia will serve as the interim president through mid-March, when Darlene Smith will begin a longer-term appointment. Joining us this morning is a new regent who is probably trying to find us. Good morning. I want to welcome Harry Coker Jr. to the board. Welcome. Mr. Coker was appointed by Governor Moore as the new Secretary of Commerce. He moves into the ex officio spot previously held by Kevin Anderson, who will be formally thanked for his service later this year. At the December board meeting, the election meeting, the board elected officers for this calendar year. This year's officers are as follows. Chair, Linda Gooden. Vice Chair, Jeff Ganella. Jeff, can you raise your hand? Secretary, Lewis Pope. Treasurer, Bill Wood. Assistant Secretary, Ellen Fish. And Assistant Treasurer, Hugh Breslin. I look forward to working together with all of you and appreciate the board's support. I'm also happy to acknowledge the USM leaders included in the Daily Record 2425 Power 100 list. Chancellor Jay Perman was once again ranked in the number 5 spot. Also included on the list were Valerie Shares Ashby, UMBC President and our host today, President Darrell Pines, Bruce Jarrell, and Mark Ginsburg. Let's give them all a round of applause. Turning to our agenda, our host, President Shares Ashby, has graciously agreed to allow Dr. Sunthra, who will present the Education Forum, to precede her welcome. Chancellor Perman will then provide the Chancellor's report, which will be followed by the reports from the councils. Before we begin, we will move to the period of public comment. Ms. Wilkerson, will you present public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Each regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Regents will include the period of public comment in accordance with the board's guidelines, which are posted on the USM website. The agenda includes 15 minutes set aside for this purpose. Requests for public comments were made or should have been made 48 hours before the meeting, and comments should pertain to an item on the agenda. The board fully dedicates this period to the speakers and will not respond to questions or comments during the meeting. As needed, any follow-up will take place after the meeting. Today we have 3 requests for public comment. They are students. We have Jude Jabai, Khadija Abdul Allah, and Asiya Silmi, who will all be speaking on the quasi-endowment fund. I ask that you please remain on topic, and Jude, you can come up to begin.
Good morning, members of the Board of Regents. I am a student at the University of Maryland. College Park. Today I want to talk about the University System of Maryland and how it manages its investments, including those within the Quasi-Endowment Fund. As you know, the USM endowment exists to support students, research, and the long-term health of our institutions. It is meant to be a stable and growing financial resource that benefits the university system, not one tied to industries that thrive on global instability. Right now, USM holds investments within companies that manufacture weapons used in wars and conflicts worldwide, including those used in the ongoing genocide of Palestinians. I would like to address the risk of current investments into weapons manufacturers and suggest better alternatives that would benefit both USM and others around the globe. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon, which supply the bombs and missiles being dropped on Gaza, are making profits, but these profits are volatile and heavily dependent on government contracts and ongoing conflicts. This is not a sustainable long-term investment. This defense industry is subject to major risks, including shifting government policies, increasing public scrutiny, and potential sanctions or legal actions due to human rights violations. These risks collectively will negatively impact potential financial gain. For example, Lockheed Martin's conservative outlook for 2025 raised investor concerns. The company anticipated lower operating profit margins, leading to a 9.2% drop in its share price. In general, these companies rely heavily on government defense budgets, making them vulnerable to political shifts. For example, after President Trump suggested that U.S. military spending could be halved, Lockheed Martin's shares fell by 1.6% and Northrop Grumman's by 3.4%. Instead of investing into weapons manufacturers that prove to be financial risks, USM should be investing in sectors that represent the future, like renewable energy, technology, healthcare, and education. These are industries that provide stable returns while also contributing positively to society. For example, in 2023, global energy investments reached approximately $2.8 trillion, with solar PV technology especially attracting more than $500 billion, surpassing investments in all other generation sources combined. However, if USM still wants to prioritize investment in defense, focusing on cybersecurity will offer low capital, high-yielding alternatives. The global cybersecurity market was valued at approximately $245 billion in 2024, and is projected to grow at a compound annual rate of 12.9% from 2025 to 2030, reaching around $455 billion by 2030. This will prove to be a better alternative than weapons manufacturers. Additionally, universities across the country are facing increased pressure from students, faculty, and the public to divest from industries tied to war and human rights abuses. We've seen successful divestment campaigns from fossil fuels, private prisons, and apartheid-era South Africa. This financial case for divestment has already been proven. When universities remove risky, unethical investments, they protect their endowments from instability and align with industries that have long-term growth potential.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Khadijah.
Good morning. I'm an undergraduate student here at UMBC, and I'll be mainly addressing the agenda item concerning the Quasi-Endowment Fund today. I'm speaking on behalf of the USM Divestment Coalition, which includes students from almost all 12 system schools, demanding the end of USM profit from war, requesting that the Board of Regents divest from all direct and indirect investments in the weapons industry is in complete alignment with the USM Foundation's environmental, social, and governance risk factors and this board's history of divestment. In fact, this history can help quell some of the concerns surrounding the divestment decision. In 2016, the USM Foundation committed to divesting from companies in the Carbon Underground 200 list due to the environmental impacts. The Foundation divesting from companies taught us that by following the Finance Committee's Board Policy 8-5.50's socially responsible investment goals or strategies, the endowment fund did not crumble, nor did university partnerships with these companies. The endowment is growing, and these companies still continue to support faculty and student grant programs and hold information sessions on our campuses. Today, global military activity causes at least 5.5% of the world's greenhouse gases, which is a major cause for environmental concern. Though some faculty partner with weapons manufacturers, the system divesting does not sever academic partnerships, which fall under the Research and Economic Development Committee charge as mentioned in today's agenda item. In 2006, the USM Foundation decided to divest from companies complicit in the genocide in Sudan's Darfur region following the U.S. Department of State's declaration. Last month, the U.S. Department of State determined that the Rapid Support Forces is perpetuating genocide in the Darfur region of Sudan and placed sanctions against the RSF leader and complicit partners. They specifically cited companies that provide military equipment to the genocidal RSF in their sanctions. These companies source their weapons from U.S. companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, and just as you divested in 2006, it is very important to recognize that U.S. weapons play a large role in the genocide in Sudan and Palestine today. Well-established and respected universities across the U.S. have stopped all investments in weapons under their ESG policy, for example, Georgetown University and San Francisco State University. It is completely within the scope of this board to 1, divest and commit to not investing the common trust in any direct or indirect investments in the top 100 arms-producing companies in the world, and to 2, add this commitment to the USM ESG factors and instruct all endowment fund managers, both internal and external, to this commitment. In no way, shape, or form does investing in weapons of mass destruction adhere with the basic ESG factors, nor the system and its campuses' commitment to positively contribute to the global community. We have been bringing this to your attention for years. You must disclose, you must divest, and until you do, we will not stop, we will not rest. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Asia.
Good morning, members of the Board of Regents. When apartheid plagued South Africa, universities across the country, including those in Maryland, recognized their moral responsibility and acted. It was a recognition that financial investments are not neutral and that institutions of higher learning have a duty to uphold justice. The oppression we stood against then is happening again, this time in Palestine. Every major human rights organization, including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, even Israel's own B'Tselem, has recognized that Israel's treatment of Palestinians constitutes apartheid. In Gaza, more than 10% of the population has been killed or injured. Every single university in Gaza has been destroyed, erasing an entire generation's opportunity for education. And yet, while Maryland once took a bold stand against apartheid, our university system remains financially tied to weapons manufacturers whose arms fuel these atrocities. This is in direct contradiction to USM's fiduciary responsibility under ESG principles that demand investments prioritize sustainability, ethical governance, and social responsibility. Yet USM continues to invest in corporations that manufacture and sell weapons used in the destruction of civilian infrastructure, schools, and hospitals. Through its quasi-endowment fund, USM is financially linked to the very industries that fuel global instability and suffering. Weapons manufacturers do not align with the educational mission of this university system. The same industry that built the tools of war destroyed the very institutions of learning we claim to uphold. The board has a choice: continue investing in corporations that profit from human suffering, violating the very ESG standards USM claims to uphold, or ensure our endowment funds align with its ethical responsibilities by divesting from companies that manufacture weapons used to devastate civilian populations. If the university system had listened to those who claimed divestment from South Africa was too difficult or too controversial, apartheid may have lasted even longer. We cannot afford to make this mistake again. Some of you may recognize me, as this is my third time addressing the board on this issue, and it won't be the last. And I won't be the last. As students, we recognize our obligation to hold our academic institutions accountable to injustice, and we will continue to return until our schools divest from the very institutions that are killing our families. USM has a responsibility to uphold its ESG commitments, not just in words, but in actions. The question is, will the university system once again stand for justice, or will it remain complicit in war and destruction? The choice is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, speakers, students, and Madam Chair, this concludes public comment.
Thank you. We'll now move to the Education Forum. Regent Pope will introduce our presenter.
Good morning, everyone. and happy Valentine's Day. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Mohan Santha of the University of Maryland Medical System, better known as UMS, where he is President and Chief Executive Officer. But before I do, I want to share a little bit about how we arrived at this topic for our educational forum in the first place. It dawned on me several months ago that many of the regents probably don't understand the relationship between UMS and the actual University System of Maryland. The University System of Maryland and University of Maryland Medical System have a special relationship and a close history, which I'm sure Dr. Santha will explain in his presentation. By statute, the Board of Regents has 3 seats on the UMS board, and those regents are Ellen Fish, Regent Ike Leggett, and myself. And in fact, I've served in this capacity for the last 8 years on that board. In addition, Chancellor Perman and President Bruce Jarrell are ex officio members of the UMS board. Dr. Mohan Santha was appointed President and CEO of the University of Maryland Medical System in 2019. UMS is a gigantic organization. It employs over 28,000 people at over 100 locations across the state of Maryland, including 9 major hospitals, and a budget well in excess of $6 billion. Prior to his appointment, he served as president of the University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore, which is home to our famous shock trauma, as well as the Greenebaum Cancer Center, and known for excellent care. He previously served as president of St. Joseph's Hospital in Towson. He served as an assistant professor at the University of Maryland Medical School and was vice chairman of the Department of Radiation Oncology. In fact, Dr. Santha has spent his entire career with UMS and the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Dr. Santha received his BA from Brown University and his medical degree from Jefferson Medical College. And in 2009, he also received an MBA from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. In the last 6 years leading UMS, he has provided dynamic leadership, has opened several new hospitals, increased profitability, improved patient care, and energized our system, which has become a model for hospitals across the country. So this morning, it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Dr. Mohan Santha.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, thank you. Louis, thank you so much for that introduction. I am also going to thank you for obviously talking to my mother and getting a lot of details about me and my life, because only she could probably have done a summary like that, so I greatly appreciate that. So as nice. Louis says, my hope is today to describe to this group a bit about the University of Maryland Medical System and our critical and symbiotic relationship with the University System of Maryland. To do that, we will do a bit of history, hopefully not too much and not too long, but most importantly, I care very much that this body understands the vision and the direction we have for an asset in the state of Maryland that we believe is a disproportionate asset, not just to the state of Maryland, but to the nation, and at times, indeed, the world. And we'll show you why we believe that to be the case. So with that, I want to take you back to the 1800s. And as you can see, the University of Maryland School of Medicine is actually the first public medical school in the United States. Davidge Hall, which is the oldest still active education site for medical education in the country, was home to the School of Medicine. Our medical school is the 5th oldest medical school in the country. When I say ours, I mean the University System of Maryland. In fact, the medical center at the University of Maryland was actually founded and underwritten by physicians who were faculty on the School of Medicine. And so we actually have the oldest academic teaching hospital in the country. And so when you think about that perspective, it's important to understand from its humble beginnings to where we are today, it is important to understand, so how did we get there? How did we get to where we are today? Truth be told, that when you look at the University of Maryland Medical Center, I would say up through the 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s, the reality was for the University System of Maryland and the state of Maryland, it was an entity that required constant investment. If you visited the medical center during that period of time, I think the truth is that you probably could not stereotype. You could not have stereotyped an urban-based safety net educational healthcare institution any better than visiting the medical center. It had a large trauma program. It was a site of education for students, but it was largely a safety net healthcare institution located in West Baltimore that was dramatically undercapitalized. And so I give the legislature and the leaders of the university at the time a dramatic amount of credit for being progressive in how they thought about the future of healthcare delivery. The decision in 1984, so now last year we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the privatization of the University of Maryland medical system out from the public University System of Maryland. And that was done by statute, as Lewis described. That foundational decision to privatize the medical system, but to create a symbiotic relationship between a public educational institution and a private not-for-profit health system was the linchpin that launched, I think, the health system that we are so proud to describe today. And so when you think about the medical system, in 1984, the system was the center. Green Street in Baltimore, that became a private entity. And the rationale for privatization was largely driven by the recognition that to compete in what is clearly a competitive healthcare marketplace, privatization allowed for that competition for the entity to actually compete for resources, compete for human talent, compete for a delivery of high-quality health care in a competitive marketplace. Those were all the drivers of the why. It also allowed the medical system as a private entity to invest its performance in recapitalization without putting that expectation and burden on the state or on the University System of Maryland. So as Lewis describes, if you go back to '84 and you pulled the financial statements of the medical system, we were probably a few $100 million a year entity that was chronically bankrupt, that chronically required state subsidy to maintain the doors being open. Today, we are excited, and we'll talk a little bit about who we are today, but it comes from that foundational decision 40 years ago for privatization and the maintenance of a critical relationship with the state of Maryland. So Lewis described to you this symbiotic relationship that is defined in statute. 3 of our university system regents serve on the medical system board. And you can see, in addition, we have the Chancellor, Dr. Perman, we have the UMB President, Dr. Gerald, we have the Dean of the Medical School, Dr. Mark Gladwin, all as members of the board, as is the President of the medical staff at the medical center. Again, our medical center in downtown Baltimore is all of the care provided is through a relationship with the faculty of the School of Medicine at the University of Maryland. And so that critical symbiotic connection has ensured that as the medical system has grown and had levels of success financially, that the core connection to the academic mission is maintained. And so we talk about that mission, and we'll talk a lot about it, but that notion of investing in education, investing in research, investing in the way we show up in our communities, and obviously investing in the ability to deliver cutting-edge, high-quality clinical care is foundational to describe both the mission of the medical system and our foundational partners at the University System of Maryland. As a physician who is proud to have been on the faculty now at School of Medicine for, hard to believe, almost, now this year will be 30 years, 30 years, that notion of academic medicine, our foundational mission, I love to say it this way, we have the responsibility of thinking about and defining the cures of tomorrow while we're delivering care today. That foundational notion, we have the responsibility of educating the future healthcare workforce of our cities, of our communities, of our state, of our nation, and indeed the world when you think about some of the programs that differentiate our organization. So yes, we are legally separate entities, a private not-for-profit health system governed by a board of directors and a public university, a school of medicine with oversight from this body, but we are inextricably linked, and it's critical that we maintain that. Again, Louis described to you the size and scale of who the system is today. We are the state's largest deliverer of hospital-based health care. We have 28,000 team members. We are one of the state's largest private employers. We have, again, hospital-based, we have about just north of $5 billion of annual revenue, and you can see the size, scale, and geography of who our health system is today. We love to say at the University of Maryland Medical System that we wake up every day thinking about Marylanders. And by doing so, we get to impact the nation and sometimes the world. But as we say, and you'll see why in a very quick minute, Maryland is our mission at the medical system. So again, December of 19, everything in life is timing, I stepped into the role of the CEO of the medical system. And I was excited to take the role, and I thought about what is it that we needed to describe as the aspirational goal of our medical system. And so we really described a desire to be leaders on a national scale in the transformation of healthcare delivery. We live in a state different than the rest of the nation because we are a state that has moved further and faster to value-based healthcare than the rest of the nation. That is an objective statement as a consequence of the unique reimbursement model that exists in the state of Maryland that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country for hospital-based healthcare. And while that reimbursement model has some unique challenges, it has dramatic disproportionate opportunity for us to be national leaders when you think about the evolution of healthcare. And as an academic health system, that is what we ought to be striving to accomplish. And so I talk a lot about what we call our 4 galvanizing themes that drive the mission every day, and it actually provides the lens through which we think about partnerships, investments, strategic direction, and our own accountabilities as leaders. First is to be relentless in our focus in the delivery of compassionate, high-quality, objectively measured, high-quality health care. It is also to think about how, given our size and scale, how do we leverage our impact to actually help transform healthcare? And we'll talk a bit about that. A very important part of our mission that I believe is critical to our organization is to understand and own the responsibility of being anchor institutions in all of the communities that we are blessed to serve across the state of Maryland. And I can't help but every time I say this, I think of my friend Dr. Perman, who understood this for as long as I've known him. And I've been blessed to have Dr. Perman and Dr. Gerald as professional mentors for me through my entire time with Dr. Perman in Maryland. Dr. Gerald dates all the way back to Philadelphia when I was a medical student. He was my professor of surgery a long time ago. and he hates when I do that. See that? But the truth is, these are leaders who demonstrate by action their understanding of our role within a larger context. And so as our health system, when you think about our size, our scale, our economic impact, that commitment to demonstration of anchor responsibilities in communities is something that I'm hoping, as you hear and look for our footprint in our communities, you'll see this. And then the fourth is the differentiation that comes with being an academic health system. And you heard me talk about our commitment to discovery-based medicine. This is what differentiates us in the marketplace. As I say, there are 46 acute care hospitals in the state of Maryland. There are 2 health systems that are academic health systems. I often struggle, for whatever reason, to remember the name of the other one, but I know of the University of Maryland and the importance of that differentiation in a competitive healthcare landscape. Our strategic priorities, which we've set, our board of directors defined the strategic vision with senior management now a number of years ago, and these are our strategic priorities when you think about how we go about setting our strategic direction and the very real decisions that we have to make about resource allocation, program investment, capital allocation, and we'll show you some examples of hopefully many of these. One of the ones in the middle is worth calling out, and you'll see us talk about what it is to be one of the largest private employers in the state of Maryland. We are in a very competitive healthcare landscape in Maryland, and our workforce is by far the greatest asset that this organization has. So the way we invest in our workforce, the way we create opportunities is critical, I believe, to the role that we play within the larger ecosystem of Maryland. I love to say, and Secretary Coker, look forward to spending some time with you in the many roles that we get to serve. But I would tell you that healthcare is one of the last industries in America that can build the middle class. I'm going to say it again. Healthcare is one of the last industries in America that can build the middle class as a consequence of the opportunity that comes from entry into healthcare with some combination of sweat equity on an individual basis and institutional investment as opportunity for members of our community to engage with us, to be employed by us, and to rise without having to leave employment, but to partner with educational partners like the University System of Maryland to ensure that they can raise their economic realities. There aren't a lot of industries that in the United States that I think can do it the way healthcare has the opportunity to do it. And so we'll talk a bit about this. When I talk about the medical system, again, these are just examples over the last 5 years of how we are trying to show up and define our differential impact. And these are, again, snippets from news media. If you go down towards the bottom right, the partnership with our School of Medicine and the University of Maryland, Baltimore, foundational, because it is our collective organizations that perform first in man, xenotransplantation. That is leading edge therapies. That is leading edge research that defines the future of organ transplantation, not just for the state of Maryland, not just for the nation, but indeed the world. We as a health system are incredibly proud of the fact that as a health system, we were the first health system in the nation as an entire system to remove the social construct of race from healthcare delivery decision-making when it comes to long-standing algorithms that actually were not based in science, were not based in biology, but instead were based in a social construct of race. By removing race from a clinical algorithm, what we've successfully done is offered access to health care in a more equitable way and actually driven more equitable outcomes. Health equity, I will argue all day, is not a consequence of where you stand politically. Just isn't. Health equity is foundationally rooted in the notion of safety and quality. And that's what we exist to do as a health system. And so we often will say that by taking on with purpose this kind of work, what we are very purposely doing is trying to drive outcomes for all of the diverse communities that we serve as the medical system to lead to, again, more equitable access and driving more equitable outcomes. So our health system today has incredible geographic scale across the state of Maryland. We are everything from the ultimate academic, tertiary, quaternary healthcare organization that is the University of Maryland Medical Center, to urban-based safety net healthcare on some of our campuses, to traditional suburban healthcare access points in Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County. We are the only acute care healthcare facilities in Hartford County and Charles County. We are rural healthcare on the Eastern Shore. 5-county area, 2,000 square miles, 170,000 people. So when you look at what's on this slide, what I am very proud of is that our health system is leaning in on defining the future of healthcare access. So again, when I think about our role as the medical system, given our size and scale, we think about it beyond the healthcare delivery responsibilities, which is foundational to us, to how we drive our footprint in the economic and business voice of our region. I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Greater Baltimore Committee, which now is the economic business voice for not just Baltimore City, but the 5 surrounding counties. And being that healthcare is a differential asset of our state, globally defined, not just within our health system, how we lean into some of the challenges and opportunities that differentiate us, whether it is healthcare, higher ed, financial services, IT, cyber, life sciences. These are the assets that we have to, as leaders, elevate, not just within the state, but the nation. Again, as I described our role as a unique healthcare delivery model for the nation, the state of Maryland, our opportunity to inform public policy in healthcare is a unique platform that healthcare leaders have as a consequence of being in the state of Maryland. And then you've heard me talk about our responsibilities. So again, we are a private, not-for-profit health system. We have a very unique relationship with the state of Maryland. You've heard about our history, the tie. The truth is, we also are blessed to have unique consideration within the state as a consequence of how they look at us as an asset to the citizens of Maryland, where resources, while they're not guaranteed ever, when we are able to make a rational argument about the value creation associated with capital investment, the state has been a differential partner to us throughout our 40-year history. You have some of these examples. But as a consequence of that partnership, we also understand that when there is need in the state of Maryland, they will look to the University of Maryland medical system differentially. The example that is most notable is the way that the state of Maryland responded to the COVID challenge, the COVID crisis. I will argue that the University of Maryland medical system was a differential partner with our university systems in helping the state navigate the crisis of the pandemic. And whether you think about mass testing, vaccination, healthcare delivery, taking care of public policy, standing up the nation's largest field hospital, Baltimore Convention Center. We did that with our partners at Hopkins Medicine and the state of Maryland. We differentiated ourselves as a state in the way we came together in partnership and responded to the crisis. And I believe objectively, when you look at how Maryland did through that crisis, we benefited from those partnerships. The medical system, again, has also partnered vastly across higher education. to drive innovative programs through these joint ventures. I've described to you our foundational partnership with the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and that is an inextricable link that remains incredibly strong. But we've also expanded those partnerships, and I will tell you, through the challenge of the pandemic, what we recognized in the healthcare workforce is we have to reimagine how we educate healthcare workforce. And partnering with institutions of higher education, many of whom you see on this slide, we've reimagined how we can educate nurses, for example, bringing them into connection with our employees, our nurses, to be part of the education process with schools of nursing across the state of Maryland, many of the organizations that live within the university system of Maryland. And when you think about our geography, everywhere from the Eastern Shore to Hartford County, Charles County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, we have differential opportunity as a consequence of that. The other example of incredible partnership is leveraging off the long-standing partnership between UMB and College Park. Empower, I don't have to tell this group about the disproportionate impact Empower has had. But that partnership, I think, took a phenomenal step forward in expansion in the example of the Institute of Healthcare Computing. And I know this Board of Regents has heard about IHC. In partnership with Dr. Pines and Dr. Gerald, we were blessed as the medical system to be invited into a partnership between UMB and College Park to really drive how we think about solving big healthcare problems through partnership with data analytics, AI, high throughput computing. This partnership is yielding incredible early results. And as a medical system, it's the first time in the Empower model that a third partner has come to the table, and we are, again, excited to bring both resources and human talent to that partnership. I'd be remiss if I did not point out, we're also very proud that we are the official healthcare providers of a few of the sports programs, both at College Park and at UMBC. For all you other university presidents, we can talk offline, but just FYI, this is, again, differential access, differential resources that we are very proud of. When I talk about where we're going as a system, I often say I need our leaders to understand one fundamental construct. For all of the success I just described over 40 years, I promise you that which has gotten us to this point will not sustain us going forward. And the reason is, it's a very fundamental concept in business, which is when the external world is evolving faster than you are, that is a recipe for what I think is the worst outcome, which is not being out of business. It's actually being irrelevant. And so for us, what I would say is we have to reimagine and transform our healthcare organization. And when I think about those external changes, I've talked a bit about the unique reimbursement model, the reality of the consumerism of medicine, the decrease in the friction of information asymmetry. Our patients and our communities come to us with far more information about their disease process, about their optionality, et cetera, than we've ever had in the healthcare delivery system. The way we imagine research and education, I don't have to tell you, right now at this point in our collective history, there are questions about how we're going to think about how those missions are going to be funded and fueled. And then there is, again, the appropriate, transparent information about how we objectively do with quality and safety. So all of those changes, I would say, require us to think differently. For our medical system, our performance in safety, in quality, in the objective measure of how patients experience healthcare within us will point to the opportunity we have in front of us to improve. I would also say, and you'll hear me talk about this in a second, we are historically a very hospital-centric business model. We are bricks and mortar, and the truth is that when you think of health and wellness of communities, you have to think outside the walls of hospitals. You have to think upstream. You have to think about where you're making investments of your assets, not just within the walls of hospitals, but more importantly, in communities and in different areas of impact that actually can prevent the need for hospital-based health care when possible. So again, now in July of this year, I guess in 24, I stood in front of our management team, I stood in front of our board and declared our aspirational goals over the next 5 years. And try and keep it relatively simple. I want our health system to objectively be measured as the safest healthcare delivery system in the state of Maryland. I also want us to be market leaders in the programs that differentiate us in terms of the human talent that we have in our collective organizations and in our partnerships with our university colleagues. When I think about cancer care, musculoskeletal care, cardiac care, and neuroscience. And while you look at these slides and you might say, if you pay attention to the numbers, you might go, okay, great, Mohan, you're kind of already there. This is hospital-based inpatient care data only. And what I care about is how we get outside the walls of our hospitals and start talking about how we are impacting care delivery in our communities, in those areas that differentiate us. So again, when you think about what it is that we are trying to do, we have some very key strategic priorities. You will hear me talking about us thinking and acting like an integrated health system. Truth be told, we have run this organization for 40 years as a confederation of states. The reality of our economics is there is only one income statement and there's only one balance sheet that defines the medical system. And yet, we've historically run our organizations with everybody believing that they lived on their own bottom lines. And the truth is they don't. And so calling that out and saying that we will function as an integrated health delivery system says that we will make strategic investments where our mission calls us to make them across the geographies that we serve. The example of that is I'm very proud of the fact that the medical system, in partnership with the state, with the governor's office, we have defined the future of rural health care as a vibrant option on the Eastern Shore. And to give you some perspective, in the nation, 150 rural hospitals have closed in the last 5 years. The University of Maryland Medical System, in partnership with the state of Maryland, is one of the few examples in the nation where you are imagining a future of rural healthcare delivery that actually transforms healthcare access across the geographies of 2,000 square miles. And then again, to put the business lens on, in order to do this, we have to have a balance sheet. We have to have an income statement that supports an organization that has, healthcare has dramatic capital needs. It is it has a capital appetite when you think about investments in technology, investments in resources that is almost unsatiable. And that means we have to think about diversifying how we think about margin creation, not for the benefit of shareholders, but for the benefits of our community and how we can reinvest those opportunities. And so you'll hear us talk a lot about advancing community health, and hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate, and are demonstrating, the notion of health equity being foundationally connected to our mission of safety and quality. So this is a great slide I love to say, which is, if you think about the left side, this is how we function, where each of our organizations have thought about life, as I call it, looking down and in. And I need our leaders to look up and out at the same time, to recognize that they are part of a health system. And while that's moving a lot of people's cheese in our organization right now, what I would promise you is what we're doing is not unique. When you look on that right-hand side of the slide, you will see some of the nation's most influential and impactful academic health systems who've done this over a decade ago. And so, kicking and screaming, we are moving into what I'll call modern healthcare delivery system as an integrated health system. And we have done this before. This notion of change, we are ecstatic at the work we are doing to transform healthcare in Prince George's County. Prince George's County was a healthcare delivery system that was a dramatic safety net healthcare delivery system for decades. Citizens of Prince George's County, a county of 1 million people, often left the county for health care whenever they could option out to do so. Or, even worse, they didn't access health care. Today, we have a state-of-the-art facility with physician providers from the community and, importantly, from the School of Medicine that is driving objective measures of improved quality and growth that is keeping Prince Georgians in Prince George's County. That work is not done, but we are incredibly proud of the work that we are doing there. And I've talked about the other transformations on this slide. Again, the way we responded to COVID, we acted like an integrated system because we had to, right? Crisis is the mother of invention, right? And so the reality is how we learn about that, what we learned about ourselves through that crisis response is going to inform how we think about acting like an integrated system and how we deliver on that commitment to health equity. I'll leave you with one last example of how we as a health system are thinking differently than we've historically thought. We're incredibly proud of the fact that within our health system, we have made dramatic investments, obviously in IT infrastructure, but also in a data analytics platform to allow us to think about healthcare delivery informed by data. That investment has spawned the creation of intellectual property that has been created to solve problems within our health system that now we have the opportunity to commercialize as a consequence of testing it within the diverse and scale and size scale of our health system. So you'll hear us and you'll see more about iHarbor as an innovation hub that exists within the medical system. Again, it's an example of this is some of what we bring to something like the Institute of Healthcare Computing in terms of the differential talent and resources that our medical system brings. This is a brave new world for our health system. I am blessed to serve as the CEO and leader of our medical system, but I will tell you our journey for what's brought us here to the 40 years. I think the next decade is going to be an incredibly exciting time at our medical system. So I'll stop here. Thank you for your partnership and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Santha. UMS has and continues to bring tremendous value to the system and the state in terms of access to excellent health care, training of future professionals, and more. The map showing where UMS facilities are located was truly impressive. Now, questions for Dr. Santha. Drew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the presentation. You spoke a little bit about your competition for market share with other organizations like Hopkins. I'm curious about the other side of that. As another academic institution, are there any existing collaborations or opportunities for that?
Oh, absolutely. So I say we have far more in common with our colleagues at Hopkins than we do that separates us. And so, yes, sometimes in the clinical arena, we will compete. But when you look at the collaborations, COVID was a phenomenal example. That was a literally daily and weekly partnership meeting, which was how are we going to cover all of the needs of not just Baltimore City, but the entire state of Maryland. When I look at the research collaborations that exist between us and Hopkins, the CTSA is a large grant that we hold jointly with Hopkins. That is a federal grant that helps drive clinical trial investments. As a cancer researcher, I will tell you the partnerships we have as the two NCI designated comprehensive cancer centers. We are partnering all the time in those areas. Our deans of our schools of medicine and our health system leadership, again, look for ways of collaboration and, quite honestly, ways to differentiate us when it comes to the advocacy for resources that are needed to drive the academic missions. So Johns Hopkins Hospital and the University of Maryland Medical Center are the only two academic health system, academic teaching hospitals in the state of Maryland. They require differential assets. They require advocacy from the state, and we do that together with Hopkins all the time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anwar?
Dr. Sonwanta, thank you for a very excellent presentation. A few years ago, we had a procurement scandal at UMS. How have you overcome that problem? Is that behind us?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and absolutely. Look, I think what you're referring to is some of the challenges associated with the governance and the process of appropriate oversight of conflicts of interest and governance that got a lot of attention externally. When I look at, and as again, objectively speaking, when we look at the governance driven by our board, our compliance programs, and our conflicts of interest programs, I believe our medical system, again, this is not just my lens, but organizations like the Governance Institute would describe us as best in class at this point in the way we oversee that. And it really is a partnership. It foundationally lives within the Audit and Compliance Committee of the board. Thank you, Ellen Fish. But management owns that responsibility as well, and we take it very seriously. And so when I look at our processes to ensure that we are protecting the assets of our organization, and importantly, protecting those who volunteer their time and service to our organization as well, I believe that we are very well positioned in that regard. So
and
thank
Dr. Santa, if I could just add, we hold once a year a world-class summit where we gather professionals from other health systems, and we have presentations and speakers, and that is to stay best in class from a compliance and a governance standpoint.
Regent McMillan?
Doctor, thank you for your presentation. I'm curious as to your biggest challenges and you face, and also how that fits into recruiting skilled workers for your system.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think the second half of your question would be my answer, which is one of the most dramatic challenges in healthcare delivery is workforce. The realities of what we experienced during the pandemic was a disproportionate brain drain of experienced healthcare workforce that left the healthcare workforce, I'll say especially in the first half of the pandemic, and they're not returning. The reality of where they were in their career paths, and healthcare historically is a very Socratic way of training and educating people. And so those who are most experienced train those who are less experienced. And when you had that disruption, the reality of trying to scale the top of the funnel now to bring people into the workforce and have them trained and ready to encounter some of the complexities associated with especially a delivery system of our size and scale has been a real challenge. It's why we've thought about and instituted these partnerships like the ACE, the Academy of Clinical Essentials, as a way of scaling. I will give you the example that as a consequence of that partnership with the University of Maryland School of Nursing, the University of Maryland School of Nursing increased their seat size by 60 students because we became part of the educational delivery system for them. So that's an example. I think the other reality is, again, when you think about the ability for, I think, thinking beyond our historic recruitment venues and being casting the net wider, that had been, there's a real conversation going on now about whether in some ways that's going to be curtailed based on some federal regulations that might come in relative to how the nation is going to think about immigrating human talent, right? Immigration and human talent. So healthcare is one of those industries that could be disproportionately impacted based on where the nation goes. So I think, Tom, for us, the biggest issue is, are we constantly vigilant about where the opportunities are to partner with institutions of higher education in that, I'll say, the innovation associated with how we're educating people and getting them into the clinical environment safely, but also in a time-sensitive way. And so that is a puzzle not yet solved, but we're continuing to work hard at it.
Regent Lewis.
Can you hear me? Yes. You spoke about health equity.
Yes, ma'am.
And in our current climate, what safeguards are you putting in place to make sure that we can maintain that level of health equity so that there's no disparity in treatment?
Yeah, so a bit about what, at least the position we are taking and the way we're going about it is to let the data speak, right? And so if you just, the notion of removal of race-based algorithms, as the example I gave you, is literally just showing the data as to what is it to actually remove an algorithm that was that had an impact in biasing access. And when you remove that bias, what you lead to is equitable access and, by the way, improved outcomes. And improved outcomes, by the way, is not just for, in the example of race, not just for those who historically may have been disadvantaged, it actually improves the outcome for all. Because what you end up doing is actually now being able to look at your outcomes without some of those inherent biases and identify, so where do you have to impact care delivery to get improved outcomes? And we see that in mother-baby, right, in maternal morbidity. We see it in the example we give you when you remove race from the assessment of kidney function, right? When I went to medical school, we understood, we learned that there was a measurement for kidney function that had a factor based on race built in. When you remove that, you actually identify kidney disease earlier. When you identify kidney disease earlier, right, you can impact outcomes for an entire group. Again, that's not through a political lens. I do understand your question. I do, and I'm not blind to that. What I've always said, what I said to our leadership team just the other day, we will be talking about this as it foundationally connects to safety and quality, because safety and quality is not something we debate every 4 years. Safety and quality is not something that is viewed through a political lens. It is the objective measure of what we exist to do in healthcare delivery. And so I will continue to believe that that will be a nonpartisan issue, and we will view it, and we will approach it, and we will talk about it as a nonpartisan issue.
Chancellor Perman.
Mohan, I think I speak for everybody in telling you how grateful and fortunate we feel that you are the leader of our healthcare system. And I simply want to point out one thing that I always hear from Mohan. Dr. Santo always says that the most important asset he has is the first 3 words of the name of the system: University of Maryland.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and by that he means all of us. He understands that, and we feel the same way. So let us go forward to achieve much safer and much more elegant health care.
Thank you. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to describe who we are. All right. Yep.
Yes, Regent Leggett.
I was just wondering, what type of grade did you get from Dr. Gerald?
Well, perhaps you may have heard that I became a radiation oncologist and not a surgeon. So while I won't pull out my medical school report card, suffice it to say, I think I made the right career path decision. And Dr. Gerald reaffirms that every time he sees me.
I failed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
right.
Dr. Sato, for a very interesting and informative presentation. We do appreciate all that you're doing, and I especially like the outcome metrics and measuring it so that you can really see where you're making progress and where there's work to be done. So again, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We will now return to our regularly scheduled and welcome our host, President Shears Ashby. Thank you for hosting our dinner last night. I understand the dancers were impressive and a very special treat. And UMBC always brings such fantastic energy and warmth. It's great for us to be back on your campus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I'd be remiss if I did not just reflect on what we just heard. I was sitting here talking to my fellow president saying, isn't it great to be in Maryland? And this is, I'm going to steal this quote, and I'm going to use it everywhere I go. When the outside world is evolving faster than you are, the worst outcome is not being out of business, it is being irrelevant. Yeah. I was like, okay, I can go home now, I'm good. We're doing our strategic planning at UMBC, and I think that is something for us to keep in mind. Welcome to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We are delighted to host the Board of Regents. This is my second time hosting you here at UMBC, and I want to welcome again our board chair, Linda Gooden, the members of the Board of Regents, Chancellor Perman, my USM colleagues, my fellow presidents and directors, and all of our guests. Many from the UMBC community are in attendance with us today, including members of our senior leadership team. I will not ask the entire team to stand, but I would like to introduce to you a few new members of our team, for those of you who may not have met them yet. Our new Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Manfred Van Doelman. Manfred, would you please stand? Our Vice President and General Counsel, Paul Meggett. Paul, would you please stand? And our Director of Athletics, Physical Education, and Recreation, Tiffany Tucker. Tiffany, would you please stand? And you can tell Tiffany gets the woohoo every time. And our new Vice President for Government Relations and Community Affairs, Jake Weissman. Tiffany always starts out by saying it's a great day to be a retriever. In just a few moments, I'm going to step aside and let two of our outstanding faculty members share with you some of their exciting work. These two individuals are impressive, and I'm excited for you to hear from them. But first, I wanted to provide a few quick highlights about UMBC, especially for those who may be new to the Board of Regents, and our visitors, and anyone who's listening who may be unfamiliar with our university. We are still a young, and I keep saying that, we are still a young institution that has been on a fast trajectory since it launched 58 years ago. By the way, for you who don't know the inside joke, the university and I are exactly a week apart in age. So it's going to be young forever. We are approximately 13,000 students from every county in Maryland and from all over the world. Our student body is incredibly diverse, 20% African American, 20% Asian American, about 8% Latinx, and about 18% international. And at our Shady Grove site, of which we are very proud, 25% of our students there, of the 500 or so students there, are Latinx. More than 100 degrees and programs are offered at a broad range of disciplines, and you saw last night, for those of you who are present, our wonderful dance program. But our disciplines range from the arts and humanities to the social sciences to social work to engineering. And UMBC is renowned as a place for great teaching and innovation. But perhaps more than anything, we are known for inclusive excellence, for our culture that welcomes and inspires inquisitive minds from all backgrounds. That core value is the foundation of our work, and it is key to our success, including our emergence as a Research One institution in 2021. And so now, I want you to hear from two individuals who are contributing to UMBC in some truly exciting ways. First, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Malia Cromer, the inaugural director of UMBC's Institute of Politics and an associate professor in political science. She is a top expert on public opinion research and Maryland politics, and the former director of the Sarah T. Hughes Center for Politics at Goucher College, where she founded the Goucher College Poll. You probably have seen her quoted in local and national media outlets, and the Daily Record has named her one of its most influential Marylanders. She is the author of the 2022 book, Blue State Republican: How Larry Hogan Won Where Republicans Lose. We were thrilled, Malia, to recruit you to UMBC to lead our new Institute of Politics at the beginning of the fall semester, just in time for the center to launch what is now called the new UMBC poll, which is giving Marylanders a new voice on key political and social issues. Welcome, Malia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, everybody. As a point of personal privilege, I am a graduate from the Pennsylvania State System schools. And so it feels really good after a career in private education to be here once again working at a public university. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about what we're doing at the UMBC Institute of Politics. I think what we're doing that makes us interesting is that we have an explicit public-facing mission, that every single thing that we do, we ask ourselves, does this work benefit, does it inform, and does it give voice to the general public? So we are interested in elevating UMBC in our local and state media by producing really smart research that's based on broad sort of political and social issues. So this is I would say, what the students say is too long, didn't read. This is my very, very long slide, and I promise the rest of them are not this long. So I want to make a pitch to you today why I think, and I know that our administration believes, that public-facing work is so important. You have probably seen this research, that over the years, this is from 2015 till today, we've seen this steady decline in confidence in higher education. Moreover, 47% of individuals, almost half, say it's worth it, but only without taking some loans, and a full 30%, almost 30% say it's not worth it at all. It's not a great place for us to be. Other survey researchers have found that when you ask what voters think, what U.S. colleges and universities are really great at, they're equally divided under this idea of understanding reality. It's all part and parcel of this really sort of negative view that the general public has increasingly held towards academia. It is really a hard pill to swallow, especially as a first-generation college student who knows that academia, a state system school education, was a gift. And I would love to be part of sort of changing the narrative, because, as you all know, it is very easy for lawmakers to cut funding for things that the public no longer has confidence in or thinks is important to society. That is an underlying public opinion problem that I think academia is facing today. I wrote this in 2021 for Inside Higher Education called Reclaiming the Narrative. So we need to do a better job of telling our stories. And the Institute of Politics at UMBC we are trying to do that, do a better job of telling the stories of what we are doing on our college campuses. I think that oftentimes the national media paints an incorrect caricature of what we're doing, and I would like to see us all do better in telling exactly the type of work we're doing, and not just speaking to academic circles, but trying to use all of our work to speak to broad public circles. So, how we're doing it at the Institute of Politics, everything we do is designed for public consumption. I take pride in the academic rigor of my polling work, but it's not for an academic audience. I purposely, the way I write, the way I communicate, is all for a general audience. It's not for an academic conference. Our leadership at UMBC expects us, myself and my associate director, Ian Anson, to engage in public-facing scholarship. This work is supported by the leadership, not just at the highest levels, but also our Dean, Kimberly Moffitt. They want us to go out, they want us to engage, they want us to write op-eds, they want us to do public commentary, and they want us to produce research that is beneficial and important and interesting, frankly, to the public at large. We are interdisciplinary. So while we're an Institute of Politics, and why I'm a political scientist and so is the director, the associate director, we are interested in elevating and encouraging public-facing work across all faculty and students in the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. For example, we are in the field right now with the UMBC poll. And a couple of questions on there are public health questions. And we're going to work really closely with the new director of our Center for Public Health Research to make sure that we are not just doing politics, but we're also doing those key social issues that are facing the state to have a deeper understanding of what Marylanders think about public health here in Maryland. And we also work intentionally with our state and local media. I have a really great relationship over the years that I've built with almost every reporter and journalist in the state. And I work very in close combination with our university communications. I can't stress this enough, how important it is for faculty to work directly with university communications. Their level of expertise on how to turn our work into a public-facing product is just unmatched. Our students are obviously at the heart of everything we do at the Institute of Politics. I just got done hiring our first cohort of student research assistants. They will help us write research questions, analyze polling data, write press releases, create infographics and data visualizations, and they are going to be directly involved with writing public commentary and op-eds. I want students who work for me to leave with a clean writing sample that has been published in a place like the Washington Post or the Baltimore Banner or Maryland Matters, that they can show to future employers that they know how to communicate effectively with the public, even on really, really tough, hot button issues. I want them to develop skills in media relations and public dissemination of their research. So even if they go in the fields where even whatever field they go into, they learn how to talk about their research and their work with the public at large, so nobody ever thinks that that work is not valuable. And I want them to learn how to do it responsibly and ethically, to engage in these policy and political issues that are really important to us foundationally here in the state. And most importantly, I want to support them in their public-facing research agendas. There is a ton of data out there that is publicly available, especially on state and local politics, and that data is just untapped, and I'm hoping that my team of student researchers can go out there and create these beautiful public-facing products that really can help inform policymakers and inform the public on the great things that we're doing here at UMBC and other places. So this is our first poll that was out, and I have to give a lot of credit to the Dean's office, because without the support of Dean Kimberly Moffitt, I would have never been able to be hired in August and then a poll out in September. So their support was behind all of this. You can see that it drives really, really great sort of public-facing work, and it shines a bright spotlight on our institution. And this is one of the things I'm really proud of as well. We also did a battleground exit poll. So as any of you who are politicos understand, Baltimore County is the battleground county. And so we did a, Dr. Anson, in combination with his with a class on voting behavior, collected about 1,000 responses from Baltimore County voters. And we released it to the public, and it was a really great learning by doing experience for the students. So they learned not just about sort of question construction, but they learned about the follies, oftentimes, of collecting data in the real world. So over the next 3 years from us, we are going to be building out our public opinion work. So we'll do the UMBC poll. We'll be, certainly as the gubernatorial election cycle, my favorite election cycle, comes up, we will do another battleground exit poll in Baltimore County. There might be some opportunities to do some national topical polling using NORC's America Speak panel. And we're hoping to build a large, broad panel of Marylanders so we can start to really elevate UMBC by bringing the community to campus more often. So things like media partnerships and community-focused events, where we're going to use that panel to recruit everyday voters to come to campus and have town halls and focus groups, be in the audience for debates and public forums, and really, again, in this really crucial battleground county and the larger region here, make sure that they know UMBC and they want to come to UMBC to participate in the politics of today. And of course, in the next 3 years, I'm hoping to help students produce as much as they possibly can these fantastic student-driven research projects on topics that they care about, on political topics that they care about. But I want them to focus really strongly on Maryland state politics and the politics of our region. Because I think in this hot-button political climate, an old adage that I always stuck with, and the reason I love state and local government so much, is there's not a Democratic or Republican way to fill a pothole. And that is a lesson that I've always really taken to heart, and that's why I'm really hoping the students, we can focus them in on doing state and local government, because I would love for them to go work for state and local government when they're done here at UMBC. And these are just some other pictures of things that we're doing. And that is it. And I hope that was, I know as professors we're sometimes a little bit long-winded, so I tried to keep it as short as possible. Thank you so much.
We are delighted to have Malia here. And to end, I'd like to introduce you to another faculty member. You've heard me say at a previous meeting that UMBC is going to the moon. That is actually true. Our second faculty presenter is planetary scientist Mehdi Benna of UMBC's Center for Space Sciences and Technology. He's going to tell you about the Lunar Environment Monitoring Station. And just for those of you who haven't heard me say this, because it's not like I say it everywhere I go, UMBC has been chosen to be one of the 3 scientific experiments on the Artemis 3 mission, which is the first time that humans will return to the moon's surface since the historic Apollo program. And so one of those experiments was from a university in Tokyo, the second was from a company in Colorado, and the third is led by UMBC. And so I now introduce to you Mehdi Benna, who's leading that project.
Well, good morning. I feel very privileged that President Ashby asked me to come today and brief you on the progress of our Lunar Environment Monitoring Station for Artemis 3, or I like to call it LEMS. As you may know, Artemis 3 is NASA's upcoming mission to return astronauts to the surface of the moon for the first time in the last 55 years. To show you what LEMS looks like, I brought up a high-fidelity model. It's on the table here that we actually use in some of our trainings and figuring out how we assemble it. So LEMS is a UMBC-led investigation with the collaboration with other institutions, NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, University of Arizona, University of Maryland, College Park, Morehead State University, and Washington University in St. Louis. This instrument suite will be deployed by the crew of Artemis 3 on the surface of the lunar South Pole in 2027. The instrument is designed to continuously monitor the seismic activity of the moon for several years. We will ask the crew to place the instrument on the surface of the moon, to deploy 2 seismometers that are carried inside this stowage box. The seismometer will be buried in the ground, and over the subsequent years, those sensors will send their seismic data, recorded seismic data, to the main station, and they will be beamed once a month to Earth. With those measurements, we will be able to characterize the structure of the lunar interior, which will tell us a lot about lunar history and overall the Earth, Moon, and solar system history. But also it will allow us to mitigate and understand how to mitigate the seismic hazards for crew. As you know, NASA's this goal for the Artemis program is to establish permanent settlement in the lunar South Pole, and so our goal is to provide the critical seismic data to ensure the safety of crew and structure. So the opportunity for us as an institution and also as individuals to be part of this landmark program, it's truly a big deal. It is a big deal in many regards. It's a big deal because it put us at the front of the space endeavors. We are going back to the moon to advance knowledge and technology, and LEMS does exactly that. LEMS is the first element of the first expedition to carry out this science and technology. In a couple of weeks, LEMS will be going through its NASA agency level critical design review. This is a really big milestone. This, if we pass our critical design review, we will be clear to complete the build of the instrument over the next 8-9 months and deliver it to the Artemis program. If we are successful with our critical design review, we will be one of the first elements of the Artemis 3 program to have reached that milestone. We are in the front of the program. It's a big deal for us because it's also recognized UMBC and its partners as leaders in space technology and space science. NASA entrusted us to build the first geophysical instruments that will be placed on the surface of the moon since 55 years. And we were selected competitively from 30 other proposals that including very prestigious institutions, or I like to call them heavy hitters in space technology and space science. It's also a big deal because it recognizes the hard work of more than 50 scientists, engineers, technicians, support staff from all the partnering institutions that worked extremely hard over 6 or 7 years to develop this technology, mature it to a level that it's suitable to go for flight. It's a big deal for our student body because it gives us an opportunity to get them involved in building LEMS through our internship program of the UMBC and Goddard Cooperative Agreement. And very often people think that with all the technology advancements we have today, it should be easy to go back to the moon. I can confess that it is not. It is as hard as it was in the 1960s. The moon is still one of the harshest environments in the solar system. It's extremely hard to get to the moon. It's extremely hard to come back from the moon. And it's extremely hard to operate on the surface of the moon. And to be frank, we love that it's hard. And we are up to the challenge. As I said, LEMS is about to go through its critical design review, and we will be starting to train the Artemis crew for how to manipulate this instrument, how to deploy it, and how to operate it. We have in April, we will have our first full dress rehearsal crew training with astronauts in suits. We will be doing that in Johnson Space Flight Center. And during that training, we will show and train the crew how to manipulate our instruments. To prepare for that, we have been working very hard over the last few months to develop these procedures. One of our methods of doing that is we go to one of NASA-funded lunar terrain that simulates the lunar environment. It's at the University of Central Florida. It's called the Exolith Lab. And here you see a video running in a loop of our team basically rehearsing all the steps it takes to deploy LEMS, and all these steps are the steps that will be done by the crew of Artemis 3 when they deploy us on the moon. It goes from placing the instrument, aligning it properly, and burying the 2 seismometers and activating. We will be guiding the astronauts all along from our Mission Operations Center on the ground, and we will confirm that the instrument will be is properly deployed. So to finish, please keep an eye on us as we continue our progress. We hope to deliver this to NASA in few months. My hope is next time I brief you, I will be announcing that we effectively deliver this hardware and that we are going to deploy on the surface of the moon. Thank you.
Thank you all, and again, thank you to our faculty doing outstanding work. The thing that I want to just leave with you is that because of the work that these faculty do, our students have opportunities to have these research experiences, both in the public sector and, going to the moon. That's pretty incredible. So thank you to our faculty. And again, Professor Bennett's going to be here with the instrument if you have questions, you want to talk to him during the break. But again, welcome to UMBC. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Shears Ashby, and thank you, Malia and Mehdi, for very informative presentations. And congratulations on both the polling and going to the moon. Yeah. That's very exciting. And now we'll have the Chancellor's report, which will be equally as exciting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to add to your comments about Ron. It's difficult, and I'm looking at the presidents. It's difficult to be here together without one of our own, Ron Nowotchik. Ron's leadership of Frostburg State was grounded in his love for his university, for the people it serves, and for the communities that Frostburg State University anchors. And that commitment animated his many friendships, and those of us lucky enough to know Ron really felt that every day. So I speak for our colleagues here. Our thoughts are with Ron's family and with everyone at Frostburg State. Ron is deeply missed. Now, I'm exceptionally grateful to President Al Dalia. He knows it. I've told him probably not as often as I should have, but many times. Al's leadership of Frostburg over many months now gave Ron the time he needed to focus on his health and on his loved ones. Next month, as the chair indicated to you, we'll welcome Dr. Darlene Brannigan-Smith to the interim presidency as we gear up this summer for a national search. And Al tells me that Darlene is already deeply engaged in preparing for that assignment. I'm delighted to welcome our newest regent, the Honorable Harry Coker. Mr. Secretary, I look forward to deepening our already strong collaboration in producing Maryland's workforce and powering its economy. Secretary Coker has welcomed me already to his table on behalf of the system, and we will do our part and more to drive Maryland's economy. It's good to have you at this table. As we come together for our first meeting of the new year, I'll ask all of you to reflect on the one that has just ended. In our annual report, which you have in your materials, you'll see several nods to our new branding campaign. It's timely in view of your report, Professor. And remember, the title of that campaign is For the Good of Maryland. Yeah, its launch couldn't be better timed as we face a significant budget cut, together with the uncertainty in the district, topics I will return to later. It is essential to tell the story, just as you said, public-facing, of who we are, what we do, and why it matters. Just one of the reasons we matter is our rich research enterprise. Research is a very timely, concerning topic to talk about these days. And I want to share with the Regents that just yesterday, the Carnegie Foundation released its latest research classifications using updated methodology. And I'll start with this, that finally names UMB an R1 university, joining College Park and UMBC. Long overdue, and congratulations, Dr. Gerald. The update, it's important to know, also includes a new research designation identifying universities with at least $2.5 million annually in research. So joining this new classification and recognition are Bowie, Towson, Salisbury, UBalt. Congratulations to you all. Fernando, I don't know why UMCS is missing. It more than qualifies, and we'll have to look into that. Let me turn to our host this morning, UMBC. And it, again, couldn't fit better, Professor. As President Shears Ashby, I know, is proud of, UMBC is now among the nation's top 10 universities in NASA funding. And this is what intentional, long-standing partnership achieves. This is a 30-year collaboration with NASA. And it's an incredible distinction, so congratulations. UMBC has also partnered with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, opening up opportunities for UMBC students to grow our core of public servants. And this is the time for it. And of course, in nurturing our public servants, UMBC models public service. And an example of that, in partnership with Maryland's CASH program, UMBC students are again providing free tax prep assistance to Marylanders who need that help. And it was great to see so many state and federal leaders celebrate the kickoff with you, Valerie. Aminta, Bowie State is marking only 160 years of excellence. And President Breaux has been making the media rounds, talking about the university's growing campus, its commitment to nurturing entrepreneurship, its new STEM offerings that power the next century of innovation. Congratulations on all of that work. UMCS, also celebrating a milestone, 100 years of pioneering environmental research, education, and engagement. I would share with you that over the last several weeks, UMCS has held centennial launches at their laboratories across the state. I was delighted to take part in the Baltimore celebration. And of course, the centennial is more than simply a celebration of UMSC's past. As you emphasized over and over, it's a commitment to a future of global leadership in climate and environmental action. So, Fernando, we're grateful for your leadership in an existential matter of our times. Joining UMSC's in the Centennial Club is the University of Baltimore. UBalt has centered its anniversary programming on the transformative power of higher education, something many of us in this room know personally about. You're celebrating your commitment to academic excellence and civic engagement as a duty, as a fundamental human duty. I've heard you say that. At a celebration last month, we explored how UBalt will draw on its assets to reimagine its work, shaping the future of Baltimore and Maryland. It was an honor to join you, President Schmoke, and we are looking forward to a great year of celebration and looking to the future. Hey, we're not done with centennials, Regents. Salisbury University is commemorating 100 years of impact. Impact that extends to the communities it enriches. And to that point, the university's determined work, President LaPrie's determined work, to bring a performing arts center to downtown Salisbury, public-facing, was just advanced with a $2 million grant from the state, which was celebrated, I know. Credit to Governor Moore, to Secretary Day. Congratulations to you. One last anniversary to acknowledge. Coppin State is celebrating 125 years. A profile in Diverse magazine references President Jenkins' twin focus on expanding high-demand academic programs and corporate partnerships. Showcasing both is J.P. Morgan Chase's $500,000 commitment to help Coppin expand career pathways in data science. Congratulations, Anthony. And through a MIPS partnership, a Maryland Industrial Partnerships grant, Frostburg State is teaming up with USGI AI to develop a telehealth platform that will expand, pertinent to me, gastrointestinal treatment available to underserved communities and bridging gaps in rural healthcare access. Badly needed. Thank you, Al. Back to UMB, they cut the ribbon on 4 MLK. That's this iconic building. When you drive into Baltimore, off 95 onto MLK Junior Drive. It's an elegant building. It's the iconic building now in the university's biopark, and it's badly needed in terms of wet lab space to power the booming biotech sector, certainly in the city of Baltimore. As important, it's a gateway to West Baltimore. It'll draw investment, we think, in an area that needs it. Bruce, it's been a dream for both of us for a long time, and congratulations to you on getting it done. Staying with that building, thanks to a $10 million gift from the Edward St. John Foundation. Edward St. John, certainly a longtime friend to the universities. The 4th floor of that building is now a translational science center. So here comes the strategic partnership again between College Park and UMB. What that center is bringing together is the clinicians of UMB with the engineers of College Park in accelerating how quickly we translate bench research into devices and therapies that make a difference to patients and the people that care for them. At College Park, and you've heard reference to this, Governor Moore announced a partnership linking the state, the university, and IonQ in a bid to make Maryland the global leader in quantum technology. $27 million in proposed state funds, which could catalyze as much as $1 billion in public and private investment, fueling economic growth, also centering Maryland in revolutionizing the many sectors that quantum touches. Thanks for your leadership, President Pines. And at Towson University, you have a new partnership with Harford County Public Schools to deal with a pressing Maryland problem, the teacher shortage. So you founded, Mark, a Pathway for Paraeducators, a program that offers the county's classroom assistants courses at no cost, on-the-job training, as they work toward full teacher certification. That's a model for all of us. UMES is going to host NOAA's 11th Educational Partnership Program, focusing on critical issues in marine and environmental science, from extreme weather to sustainable aquaculture. And is Provost Allen here? Yes, he is. Thank you for representing President Anderson, and congratulations. Again, back to partnerships with K-12 schools. UMGC is partnering with Ancora High School. That's an online secondary school whose adult students can earn a traditional high school diploma. The partnership creates for these students a seamless transition into higher ed. Thanks for creating that, Greg. And just a few words about our regional centers. The USM at Southern Maryland hosted a delegation from the AUKUS Forum, AUKUS. That's a trilateral security partnership among Australia, the United Kingdom, and the US, the AUKUS Forum, to explore how researchers, contractors, the Defense Department might collaborate for mutual benefit. AUKUS is the largest manufacturing project in the history of Australia. And Dr. Abel, I know that was where are you? There you are. A great opportunity to showcase the center that we're proud of and to bring together so many partners. At the USM at Hagerstown, they're collaborating they're collaborating with UBalt's Merrick School of Business to bring its top-ranked MBA program to Western Maryland. Thanks, Dr. Ashby, Dr. Schmoke. And the universities at Shady Grove, marshaling network events, panel conversations, workforce to reimagine connections that prepare students for local industry and connect them with local employers. Dr. Kademian, thank you. So let me turn to the governor's FY26 budget proposal. And I'll be frank, with Maryland facing a $3 billion deficit, You've read the papers, maybe growing. We went into legislative session expecting to suffer significant cuts, and we did. The governor's proposed appropriation for the USM is down more than $105 million over last year, and as you know, that's a base cut of nearly 5%. And without question, the cut is painful. I made the point in Annapolis that when you're already a lean organization, and we've been doing efficiency and effectiveness for 15 years in this system, when you're already lean, there isn't much that isn't painful to cut more. So yes, every one of our universities, Regents, will face difficult choices. But as challenging as this budget is, it's also one that our universities have been planning for. And enshrined in those plans is a guiding principle that will insulate our people as much as possible from the impact of cuts. For our employees, it means we'll exhaust every other personnel action before reducing our existing workforce. For our students, it means we'll protect financial aid to the extent we can and continue to prioritize part of what makes us well known, the affordability that Maryland families depend on. Now, for all the challenges that this year and this budget bring, there are bright spots too, and I want to point them out. In his State of the State address delivered last week, Governor Moore outlined his growth agenda, calling for investments in quantum, in AI, in clean energy, in aerospace, in biotech. These are all strengths of the system. These are all sectors that we have a stake in and that we can help power. And so we're partnering with the state to ensure these industries thrive right here in Maryland, fueled by our influence, our expertise, our adjacencies to the very businesses and sectors that we want to thrive in Maryland. And as I mentioned, this work is going to be advanced by the governor's Economic Competitiveness Subcabinet under the leadership of Secretary/Regent Coker. And again, I am very proud to serve on that subcabinet in response to the governor's request. The last topic I'll address relates to the uncertainty we're navigating as the federal transition affects our operations, our programs, our budgets. As we assess the impact of executive orders and other actions on our system and our schools, the presidents and I are meeting weekly, Regents, and sort of the model we created during COVID. And the leadership team in the Chancellor's office is doing the same with their university counterparts. For example, the Vice Presidents of Administration and Finance are meeting regularly together with Ellen. Our research people are meeting together with Dr. Masucci, our academic folks, our provosts, meeting with Dr. Rinn. We are carefully assessing, carefully sharing, and planning. We are certainly getting legal counsel from the Attorney General. We've learned, and you heard this reflected by Dr. Mohan in his system, we're learning the value more and more every day of working as a group, and I'm happy to report to the Regents that the teamwork is showing. Now, you're aware that a proposed cut to the NIH in its indirect cost rate, their proposal of an indirect cost cut has been paused. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to speak to this in some detail because it's the background I come from. These costs, there should be no mistake, these costs are essential to conducting some of the most vital research we do. And if I may claim some personal privilege, as a physician who has been touched by the power of research, I reflect on the fact that what I could do for sick children as a newly minted pediatrician decades ago pales in comparison to what I know to do now. That's the power of biomedical research. And we must have fidelity to that. What about the money? The rate cut would mean an annual loss, this is at the NIH, of at least $60 million to the system in the next year. But it's important to realize that that loss doesn't stay with the system. Of course, our research enterprise has a ripple effect in Maryland's economy. A loss of $60 million means Maryland loses $150 million in economic activity that we alone contribute. We buy things to do research. It means Maryland loses nearly 500 jobs outside the USM, never mind the impact on us inside. 500 jobs that we alone contribute to the economy. And most worrisome, beyond the impact on life-saving research, if the rate cut is applied across federal agencies, the numbers grow significantly. And our research collectively is funded by multiple agencies. I mentioned NASA, NOAA, and what about the Department of Defense, the National Science Foundation, and so forth. So we're grateful that the lawsuit Maryland joined to block implementation of the NIH directive was successful, and that our state and congressional leaders are advocating for us. And for the, and this is not hyperbole, the life-saving work we do. Let me talk about the students finally. Our students are concerned about many of these same things. I've heard from the USM Student Council and from student groups at our universities. Yeah, you heard about the experiences that the students derive from the research we conduct. So they're worried about threats to research and diminishing opportunities in the R&D space. They're worried about shrinking federal internships, which have long been a mainstay for our students. And how about the personal side? They're worried about family finances should DC layoffs reach into their own homes, or should financial aid be cut off. They're worried about their safety on campus, given immigration enforcement. I'm telling you what they're worried about, and about their place at our universities, whether they're still welcome and valued and supported. As my colleagues do, I hear our students' concerns, I understand their anxieties, and I want them to know that we continue to welcome all our students and value them and support them always. Our values are our values. They don't change. We'll come through this uncertainty together, I say to you, as strong as we've ever been, ready, able, unafraid to do what that new branding campaign tells us to do: change the world for good. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Chancellor. Any questions for the Chancellor? Seeing none, thank you for your report. We'll now have the Council of University System Faculty, Dr. Haverback.
Good morning, Chair Gooden, members of the Board of Regents, Chancellor Perman, and university presidents. Thank you for having me this morning, and thank you for having us at UMBC. The food last night and the dancing was incredible, and it's always a pleasure to be here, so thank you. Since I know that you already have a report, per usual, I will keep my comments brief. As we end week 3, the faculty are very busy. Much of the comments that Chancellor Perman spoke about regarding student concerns are also on the faculty's minds as we work with students and teach and think about all the things that are coming down the line. The Council University System Faculty General Body meeting was held on January 22nd. This was in person with a virtual option at the USM Adelphi office. One highlight of the meeting was having UMGC President Gregory Fowler come and speak with us. Thank you for sharing all that is going on at UMGC. Another highlight, as always, was having Chancellor Perman, who was there, willing and ready to discuss the USM and answer any questions that we had. And Andy Clark also came to join us to discuss USM Government Relations and Advocacy Day. The general body was supposed to have a meeting on Wednesday, however, due to the inclement weather, we did not. As you know, the legislative session is in full swing, and CUSIP members are keeping up to date on issues that pertain to higher education and faculty. One way that we stay informed is through Andy Clark's Joint Council weekly legislative update calls on Monday mornings. And we really want to thank him for doing this. It is sort of a Reader's Digest of what's going on in Annapolis, and it's just quick and tells you everything that you need to know, so it's very much appreciated. The Council is also preparing for Advocacy Day, which will be on February 19th, next Wednesday. Always a highlight of I always like to highlight some of our committee work. And I also want to take a moment to really thank the committee chairs, because that's really where the work is getting done. When I took on the chairperson role, I did not want the work to come from the chairperson. However, I wanted it to come straight from the committees. And the committee chairs really do a lot of behind the scenes work, research, looking into what's going on with faculty and students and what we need to address. So I just want to take 1 minute to highlight a few of those things. The awards committee has sent forward their recommendations, and I believe that today that is being discussed. And the committee did note again this year the excellence of the applications. They had a hard job, and they were very, very excited about the recommendations. The Education Policy Committee is working on numerous initiatives, including the following. The committee is working with the Kerwin Center on an AI showcase and organizing planning meetings and information for this showcase. I mentioned before that last year we really focused on what faculty will do with students, and this year we're focusing on that, but also on faculty research, reviewing of manuscripts, all the things that are going into what's going on with research and AI. Also, that committee, with the Chancellor's encouragement, are formally examining USM policy for deficiencies, especially whether it adequately addresses faculty-on-faculty and student-on-faculty bullying, cyberbullying, etc. I know that I've mentioned this before, and this will probably take a while as policies do, but right now the committee is digging deep into the history of the policies, the staff policy, and policies at other institutions and other states that could help them negotiate and create such a policy that would eventually come forth to you. The Legislative Affairs Committee is hard at work preparing for Advocacy Day, and the Rules Committee did run their election for the C7 task force, and 3 CUSIP members were identified to serve on that task force. Madam Chair, this concludes my remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your report. Any questions for Dr. Haverback? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Council of University System Staff. Dr. Patricia.
Good morning, everyone. Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, Regents, USM presidents. Happy to be here with you today. So I'd like to begin my report by acknowledging, as others have, the loss of President Nowacek and express my condolences to the FSU community and his loved ones. As I noted in my report, I always enjoyed my work with President Nowacek and found him to be a committed champion for education, especially in Western Maryland. I'd also like to thank President Shears Ashby and the faculty, staff, and leadership for their hospitality last night and today, and for that really delicious and addictive bacon that you give us. It was great to also see a bit of the arts last night with your talented student performers, reminding us that UMBC offers a wide range of educational opportunities for students. So my written report for you today discusses our plans to update the CUS Constitution that is sorely outdated, reinstate our newsletter to improve communication with all of our constituents, and the announcement of a new co-chair of the Staff Resources and Special Projects Committee, Kevin Bruce of UMSES, who took on the role starting in January. So there are two other areas of my report that I would like to highlight for you today. So it likely comes as no surprise that my first topic of conversation is prescription coverage, or at least no surprise to those of you who have coverage with the state of Maryland. As you may be aware, 2 changes occurred in the state prescription plan as of January 1, 2025, an adjustment in the formula used to determine coverage on prescriptions, and a provider change from CVS Caremark to MedImpact. So though originally assured the changes would not affect those covered by the state prescription plan, there have been significant impacts. From medications no longer covered and prescriptions like insulin being denied to pharmacies no longer being in network, many have felt the impact. The state has worked to ensure coverage for an additional 90 days to assist with the transition, but it has still been a challenge, especially for those with significant and/or specialized prescription needs. So we plan to continue to monitor the situation and we'll share our concerns with the USM and the state as needed. So as I move to my next topic, I'd like to start by saying that I stand before you today without a political agenda, but to share the experiences of staff, which I feel is my duty to do as chair of CUS. Beyond the control of the USM, the chaos of abrupt federal funding cuts has already threatened jobs, the careers, the livelihoods of USM staff and faculty. This has caused uncertainty and instability in the service we are able to provide for our students and the research that we conduct. Staff are steadfast in meeting the goals of our campuses, our vision as the USM to educate and serve the people of Maryland. But to say that the national budget landscape has not impacted the work we do each day is to do a disservice to the experiences of many staff across the USM. I trust that the USM will do what it can to retain faculty and staff, and as always, I offer to be and ask to be a partner in those efforts, especially as we brace for state cuts as well. Many staff also stand ready to help. Use us as advocates, use us as allies, as sounding boards for decisions. We will advocate for the USM at Advocacy Day next week, February 19th, but we can do more. I'd like to echo President Shears Ashby in saying that we as educators are truly fortunate to be in Maryland, and I'd say even more fortunate to be in the USM. And though I may sound like Chicken Little each time I stand before you, I do believe this, though our challenges are still real. Chancellor Perman said recently that chaos needs to be addressed with calmness, not indifference. I agree and have been trying to live that message in my advocacy. I also add that chaos should be addressed with empathy and, where possible, transparency. Those who feel they have some opportunity for input or a chance to be heard, some opportunity for partnership and action, they'll be able to help the USM survive in these times and do so in a way that minimizes the disruption to our students to bolster their likelihood of success. So thank you so much for your time today and for all of your work and to lead our campuses in these really uncertain times. And congratulations to Chair Gooden and her re-election as role of chair. So we can be assured that the trains will run on time with your continued leadership. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions for Dr. Patricio? Okay, hearing none. Thank you for your report. We'll now move on to President Breaux, who will do the Council of University System Presidents.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, and Regents. And thank you to President Shears Ashby and to all at UMBC for hosting today's meeting. And I'll have to get some of the bacon before I leave the meeting today after hearing the remarks. I would like to also acknowledge the Council of University System Presidents mourns the passing of our dear colleague, Dr. Ronald Nowacek, President of Frostburg University. We send our condolences to his family and friends and to the entire Frostburg campus. And we are so very grateful for his contributions to the council, for his leadership and dedication to Frostburg University. And so just know that he will be missed. And again, our deepest sympathy and condolences. CUS last met we met for the first time this calendar year on January 6th, virtually. This meeting had a full agenda to start off the new year. First, we heard from an update from Chancellor Perman on USM's regional higher education centers. And then we heard from Ellen Herbst, Senior Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance, and Colleen Allberger, Executive Director of the University Budget Office, who presented a budget update. We also learned about the proposed revisions to the USM policy on debt management from Celeste Denson, Associate Vice Chancellor for Financial Affairs, and Samantha Norris, Director of Financial Planning and Analysis. And then finally, our meeting concluded with discussions that were labor-related and addressing the issues around DACA and other issues that we're facing as our campuses are undergoing a great deal of change or hearing about a great deal of change. The discussions were led by Chancellor Perman and Assistant Attorney General Catherine Bainbridge, respectively. CUS also met on February 3rd, and at this meeting, we discussed recent and ongoing changes that have come from the federal executive branch. And I'd like to acknowledge Chancellor Perman and all at the system office for their additional contributions and bringing us together to the structure that Chancellor Perman outlined and ensuring that we are communicating and collaborating as much as we can to address the changes that are being announced. This concludes my remarks and my report, and I'm open for any questions that anyone might have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions for President Burrow? Seeing none, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Now we'll have our final council report, Student Council report, which will be presented by Regent Parker.
Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank President Ashby and all of UMB staff for yesterday's hospitality at yesterday's board dinner and also for hosting today's meeting. Today, I will be speaking on behalf of Genevieve Gambier, who is the USM president of the USM Student Council. Good morning, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, the Board of Regents, and university presidents. We as a council want to offer our condolences to Frostburg on the passing of President Nowacek, and we are extremely grateful to him for all the leadership and support that he has shown us as students. The council has had its first general meeting of the semester earlier this month. The government relations team first shared about the governor's plan for the USM budget. With Advocacy Day coming up next week, we hope to not only advocate for 2 bills the council voted favorably on, but also to convey the importance of higher education to students and the impact our institutions, the experiential learning, and scholarships have had on us. The rest of the meeting was an open conversation centered on the ways in which ongoing federal shifts and executive orders could potentially impact students in higher education, and it naturally grouped into 4 key themes. The first one dealing with research in medicine. Research papers being redacted, federal institutions scrubbing research that includes certain key phrases or words centered around vaccines and gender identity, rebranding and making changes to master's degree on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The second one focused on campus safety. What will immigration and customs enforcement interrogation look like on campuses? Students are hoping for more communication from institutions, including whether there are legal resources and hotlines for students to be informed of how to comply with federal agents while still protecting their own constitutional rights. The third key theme is financial. Looking ahead at potential increases in financial aid requests given unexpected federal layoffs, as well as a potential reduction in enrollment of international students. And last but not least, the fourth key theme, internships and career plans. Changing the job and internship landscape for students, how that might affect future career plans with federal departments or even corporations with shifting stances on DEI. With all of that being said, I would like to end on a more uplifting note. One student mentioned the importance of creating a community among students' leadership across our campuses, and that inspired a conversation on holding a retreat or a summit centered around leadership, career building, and advocacy, bringing us together beyond our monthly meetings and newsletter system. We should hopefully see a student council retreat on the cards for future years. And with that being said, that is the end of my remarks. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Parker. Any questions for Regent Parker? Seeing none, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Decisions regarding which items to include on the consent agenda were made by me and the committee chairs. However, any regent may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Before I move approval of the consent agenda, I ask if there are any items that any regent would like removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Seeing none, I move approval of all of the items on the consent agenda. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Our next order of business are the committee reports. And first up, the Committee on Finance will provide its reports on the fiscal year 26 operating and capital budgets. Regent Fish, please begin our reports.
I'm going to introduce and turn it over to Senior Vice Chancellor Herbst. She will walk us through an update as of where we stand now and what we know now, both from an operating budget standpoint and also a capital budget standpoint.
Thank you, Regent Fish. Good morning, everyone. We are going to start with the operating budget, and the Chancellor covered very well in his report our current state. I was just going to add a few process remarks. So to start, as just a summary, when we talk about the governor's budget request, we are talking about the appropriations portion of our budget only. So as you all, I think, remember, our total unrestricted and restricted funds annually going into FY26 is estimated to be $7.9 billion, so just under $8 billion. When we talk about the governor's allowance, we're talking about $2.2 billion of that total. So a significant portion of our revenue base. And as the Chancellor mentioned, we are looking at a 5% base cut. Base cut is simply means that that money goes away, not just in FY26, but forevermore. So it is significant, certainly much more significant than a one-time cut. We are almost halfway through legislative session. Hard to believe. I think it's next Friday, right? Not that we're counting Susan, but we're about halfway through. And as you know, the governor's request is the beginning of the conversation. The General Assembly has authority to make changes to that budget, both up and down. Led by the Chancellor and Chair Gooden, we spend a lot of time in Annapolis and with Susan's able direction talking to legislative leaders. We also have hearings. So each year, in addition to the USM hearing on the budget, we have about half of our universities have individual hearings. Once the final budget is agreed to and voted on by the legislature, and then signed into law by the governor, but before it's signed into law, we will bring back the final budget for USM, traditionally in the last meeting of the academic year, June, for the board to provide a final vote on. I will pause here for any questions before moving on to the capital budget. Okay, moving on. And a little bit brighter news on the capital side, so happy to end this discussion on a little bit more positive note. Your materials include a summary chart comparing the board's requests to the state, which you may recall also in June every year, the board votes on recommending a capital improvement program to the governor for his consideration. This is a 5-year plan that then goes to the governor and gets voted on by the legislature and approved by the governor finally. I want to share with you all that we're looking at a very strong outcome. The new 5-year CIP for us totals $1.23 billion. This is an increase of more than $200 million compared to the 5-year allocations from the previous 2 budget cycles. I will not, for the sake of time, I will not go into a lot of detail about the highlights. It's in your materials. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I will point out this is the second highest 5-year CIP in our history. So good news there. And again, for the sake of time, I will pause for questions.
Tom?
This is kind of integrated operating capital budget question. You know, given the state's fiscal year, July 1st, and then the federals in October, the feds are going through their budgeting process right now. There could be very extreme results from those reconciliation actions. How does that play in to the state's budget? And have there been precedents before we may have to come back and kind of redo all this?
That's a great question. Thank you, Regent McMillan. So to answer your last question first, there has indeed been a recent precedent, several recent precedents. So yes, the state and the federal government have 2 different fiscal years. And that can always lead to the need to re-examine the decisions that the state has made. But we've had other events occur separate from the federal government. If you recall, when we were facing the beginning of COVID and facing all the uncertainty about what that might do to the state's budgets, the state does have the authority, first through the BPW, to make changes to the operating budget, and indeed they did that. You may recall as recently as last July, the BPW took action to change the FY25 budget that had just been approved based on some information that came to light after session was over that caused the need to reallocate money between agencies. And in fact, we did take a reduction in our FY25 budget, which has been characterized as a one-time. So yes, there are mechanisms the state has to come back in after these decisions have been codified into law to make changes as needed.
Any other questions for Ellen? Seeing none, Ellen, thank you for your report. And I think it's important to note, with all of the issues facing Maryland, we do want to thank the governor for keeping us informed throughout this whole budget process. There were no surprises when the budget came out. And we want to thank him for the capital increase budget. So it's important to note that, that we did get an increase in capital. So although we never like any budget cuts, we do understand it, and we understand that we're a big piece of the budget for the state. Our next item is a resolution of appreciation for President Nowotchek. As I said in my welcome, President Ron Nowotchek distinguished himself as steadfastly focused on student success and regional engagement. The Board of Regents of the University System of Maryland would like to gratefully acknowledge Ronald H. Nowotchek's outstanding contributions to Frostburg State University, the University System of Maryland, and the entire state of Maryland. The resolution was given to President Nowotchek's family prior to his passing. It does require approval by the board, albeit retroactively. I move the board approve the resolution to honor President Nowotchek. Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next, we'll hear an update from Frostburg State University's interim president, Dr. Al Dalia. As you know, Frostburg University has been working diligently to address a $7 million budget deficit. The university has engaged in the difficult job of cost-cutting across the university and has seen significant progress as a result of this effort. President Dalia, we look forward to hearing your report.
Thank you. Chair Gooden, Chancellor, all of you who have expressed your thoughts and condolences on President Nowotchek's passing, thank you very much. It's appreciated. I will convey that to the family. Ron was a dear friend of 25 years and an impactful and visionary leader, not just for Frostburg State University and for the university system in the state of Maryland, but for our entire tri-state area that we serve as a university. So thank you. Madam Chair, I was asked to present a progress report on our educational market alignment plan, which is the term we have coined for meeting the challenges that we face at Frostburg State University. Last year at this time, with an evolving budget situation, we believed that we were looking at about a $3 million deficit for the then upcoming year, the current fiscal year, fiscal 25. That $3 million deficit kept growing, and it was the deficit that we very actively and openly communicated with our campus starting the previous November through a series of campus-wide meetings about the budget and about issues that had been raised by the campus community of concern about where we were headed and what we were going to do about it. What we found is that $3 million expected deficit last February grew. It grew to $7.1 million on July 1st as a structural deficit for the university Frostburg State. That $7.1 million deficit, as Ellen Herbst just alluded to, actually grew by another 1%, another $546,000, 10 days later when there was a budget rescission to all of us in the university system, to nearly $7.7 million in structural deficit for Frostburg State University. Keep in mind that $7.7 million of deficit is in relation to what was then a $109 million total operating budget for the university. So as we looked at what we could do for the university and why this deficit has occurred, it is because over the preceding 14 years, we saw a 34% decline in our enrollment. That's 1,700 students during that period of time. To put that in context for us, and I hate to do this because I've been admonished many times that a university is not a business, but without it running like a business, a university is not a university either. For us, a student at Frostburg State University nets us roughly $10,000 in net revenues. So a decline of 1,700 students is the decline of $17 million in net revenue for the university over those 14 years. What that led to is also a decline in our student-to-faculty ratio. During that period of time, we started at about an 18-to-1 student-faculty ratio. At the time, we were having to make decisions about how we meet our challenges. That student-faculty ratio had dropped to less than 13 students to 1, actually 12.96 students to 1. That is not a sustainable ratio for our university. That was largely due to an increase of personnel costs, the challenges we had. And many people don't realize this. Over the last 5 years, the compounded value of the increase of our personnel cost in the university averages about a 40% increase for individuals employed by Frostburg State University. Over 40%, we saw, over 5 years, we saw a roughly 40% increase in personnel costs for FSU. State funding decreases, of course, have played a role in that, and unfunded mandates, particularly related to personnel costs that we had. We have to cover the increases in cost to 17% of our workforce because they are not, although they are state employees, they are not funded with state dollars. So when you add all of those things up, it adds up very quickly to $7.7 million in deficit. So as we took a look at what it is that we could have done as a university, we looked across the entire university enterprise. There was no part of the university that was not looked at nor touched as we looked at the budget cuts. And keep in mind that these budget cuts were not the first time we did budget cuts, but were really the culmination of about 10 years worth of cutting and belt tightening, mostly on the non-academic side of the university, from everything from maintenance to staffing positions and personnel, non-academic. So what we saw last year when we put together the plan, and this plan was put together not solely in my office with a group of people behind closed doors. We invited the entire campus community. We established portals on our website for recommendations and suggestions on how it is that we could meet these budget challenges. And we received about a dozen ideas about how that could be done. Every one of those dozen ideas was incorporated in part or in full in the plan that we came up with. We established what we called the Bobcat Budget Team, a tiger team, to look at the budget situation on campus and as a group recommend the kinds of directions that we should go in and the places within our budget that we should look to cut in order to meet the challenges that we had. That tiger team was inclusive of our graduate and undergraduate student government associations. It was inclusive of our staff and our faculty senates, and it was inclusive, of course, of the administration. We came up with cuts throughout the university in operational unit reductions and savings of just over $1 million, $1,044,000 in cuts in a variety of different ways, everything from shutting down two buildings and thereby saving the costs of utilities and the like, to eliminating 70% of all of our mobile phones that we had issued on campus, which is not a lot of money, but we were looking for nickels and dimes as well as thousands upon thousands of dollars. We did an administrative reorganization. There were many concerns across the campus about our administration being large and costing too much. The facts are that Frostburg State University had the smallest senior administration of any school in the USM system. And the cost of that smallest administration was actually the lowest of any USM school. Nonetheless, we heard the concerns, and we merged 4 divisions into 2, thus eliminating 2 vice president's positions, including my vice president's position when I held that position before. We looked at athletics. We heard many concerns and complaints about athletics and the growth of athletics. Those of you that have been around a while will recall that Frostburg State went from a Division III NCAA member to Division II with increasing costs in that. But along with the increased costs, we also saw an increase in the number of student athletes that came to Frostburg State. Nonetheless, we looked at the athletics budget, and we cut $883,000 from the athletics operating budget. We also moved $1 million in scholarships from athletics to academics and solicited proposals from all of our academic departments on how that $1 million in academic scholarship ought to be used to increase the number of students in a variety of different departments. We received 35 proposals. We have 26 departments on campus. We received 35 proposals and funded 20 of them. And those 20, if all deliver on their expectations, will yield 100 new students who will receive scholarships in a variety of different academic programs. And then we did the hard thing, the thing that I don't believe has ever been done with any school in the University System of Maryland. We sought and received authorization to move forward with academic prioritization, retrenchment. For those who are not in the academy, retrenchment means the elimination of faculty appointments in the tenure track and tenured faculty. It is not an easy thing to do, but we did that. We went forward with that, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. That retrenchment has 0 savings projected in the current fiscal year. The reason for those 0 savings is because of the notifications that are required of faculty depending on their years of service, and therefore we were not projecting and in fact are not going to get any savings from those actions in the current fiscal year. But we also looked at the other side of the ledger beyond the cuts, which was the revenues. We had projected additional students, an increase in enrollment for this current fiscal year, this current academic year, which equates to a roughly $1 million increase in our revenues. And I will talk about that in just a minute. USM also was a huge help to us. We could not have done what we have done were it not for the help and support of USM and the Board of Regents in helping to defer payments that we would normally have to make, bond payments, helping to defer payments that we would normally make to our fund balance, and substituting payments USM has for FSU, and actually providing a cash loan to us of $800,000 in order for us to be able to provide the cost of living and merit increases to our campus community that they needed. The result of those projections would have been just over a $3 million structural surplus in this current fiscal year. That would have been roughly a $10.7 million swing over the course of the current fiscal year. Here's the actual. So from all the categories that we listed, we have already obtained a $2.5 million savings from all of that. In addition, we had just over $200,000 of additional unplanned savings, largely from retirements that we had on campus. And the revenues, I mentioned that we had projected an increase of 100 students in our enrollment. We had 81 students increase in the fall semester. And we had 94. That number is actually wrong because our census day was Tuesday, and I sent this on Wednesday morning. We actually had a 97 student increase in the spring. You'll recall our goal was 100 students. We got more than that, which means our revenue that we will generate was not $1 million in revenue in the current fiscal year. It's actually going to be $1.3 million once we make the correction on the students in the spring in additional revenues. So when you take a look at all that with all the help from USM, we are not looking at a projected $3 million and change in structural surplus this fiscal year. What we are looking at right now, with 5 months yet to go in this current fiscal year, Frostburg State University is $3.5 million in the black structurally. And that means that we will have, for the first time in nearly a decade, the financial resources to strategically make investments in the future of the university. So the projected budget situation for fiscal 26, which starts in 5 months, is that we had expected a $7.7 million structural deficit with year 2 savings from the educational market alignment plan. We will have a $3.3 million structural surplus. That's after we pay back USM and after we begin paying all of the deferred payments and substitutions that USM has allowed us to do. Obviously, these numbers I'm going through are exclusive of any budget cuts that we receive, but we can talk about that in a second. That fiscal 26 number does include some savings from retrenchment, because there are some of those notifications and some of those separations that will occur before the fall semester begins. Fiscal 27, that projection goes up to $4.2 million in structural surplus. Again, this is after all obligations to USM are paid. So let's talk about retrenchment, because there has been a fair amount of misinformation and hyperbole about the retrenchment process. And I want to bring back your attention to our student-faculty ratio and the decline of that. It started out at what we think is the ideal of 18-to-1 student-faculty ratio. It had declined to less than 13-to-1. And what we saw is that the target we established was to get back up to a 16-to-1 student-faculty ratio. We wanted to reduce costs in fiscal 27 by $4.875 million from our faculty lines. And we wanted to maximize regular faculty retirement, and they did. We had 4 faculty members who had planned to retire and did retire as a normal retirement. We also let the faculty know that there is this process, little known at the time, that the Board of Regents policy allows and that our faculty handbook allows, called transitional terminal leave, sometimes referred to as phased retirement. It is a process that requires the faculty member to put forth a proposal. The administration cannot, it's not a buyout offer. The administration cannot go to faculty and say, here's the deal I've got for you. We have to wait for the faculty to come to us with a proposal. And we did, and they did. And they were largely motivated altruistically about savings to their departments and the potential jobs of more junior faculty members that could be saved. What we found is that 13 faculty members, that number is 14 because I have since signed one just last week, but there were 13 faculty members that agreed to a transitional terminal leave proposal. So as of the time that we had to make the decisions on retrenchment, there were 17 faculty, senior faculty members who either retired or had agreed to a transitional terminal leave. Not one of those 17 senior faculty members, let me repeat that, not one of those 17 faculty members, because of what the dean said, because of what their department said, because of what most of the individual faculty members said, need to be replaced. Those faculty members are valued at about 1.5 times the compensation levels of more junior faculty members. And that's important because each one of those faculty members could, in fact, save the job through retrenchment of 1.5 more junior faculty members. So we went through and took a look at the actual faculty reductions. I won't go through all the details of how we did that. Retrenchment specifically refers to tenured and tenure-track faculty. You can also take a look from administrative perspectives at reducing the number of adjunct faculty and the number of non-tenure-track faculty that we have on campus. And we did all of that. We established a retrenchment plan committee led by faculty, whose faculty members were largely elected by faculty to serve on that committee. And they came up with an outstanding plan, very thoughtful plan, a quantitative plan to look at how we should reduce our faculty. We had established goals before we knew what the number of transitional terminal leaves and retirements were going to be of that 16-to-1 student-faculty ratio, that $4.875 million in savings. And what that equated to, worst case scenario, would be the elimination of 45 tenured and tenure-track faculty positions, which just coincidentally, I use that term lightly, equates to 22% of the faculty, which was the delta between the reduction in our enrollment and the reduction through attrition of our faculty. That number was a scary number. The bottom line number that you see here is where we wound up. We eliminated 11 adjunct positions, each one teaching one course. We eliminated 4 full-time non-tenure track. That number will actually become 3 when we go through the rescission period that the transitional terminal leave I signed last week is up, and we will rescind one of those 4 FTNTT notices. And 4 faculty were retrenched, 3 tenure track and 1 tenured faculty member. So that was the result of that. And by the way, our student-faculty ratio will be 16.5-to-1. And we didn't quite meet the $4.875 million in savings. We're going to save $4.873 million. So I'm happy to take any questions or address any other issues people have.
Any questions for Al? Yes, Hugh and then Bill. Okay, Bill, you can go first.
Thank you very much. I just want to compliment you on a fabulous report.
Thank you.
And a great job dealing with some difficult problems. That is really impressive.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It was not something that I did alone.
Yeah.
Al, I'm going to second what Bill said, but I would also, and I know Ron was part of that, and I think having some understanding of the process, I think it's important for everybody to understand, I believe with the faculty decisions, that those came out of a faculty committee. So it wasn't a top-down decision relative to those. It was the faculty on, there was a process, and the faculty on staff actually made those recommendations, which I really applaud. And obviously the success so far of that is really, really important. But I really want to make a comment, and that would be, when you're faced with anything like this, the rumors that come about as a result of this can be really problematic, both in terms of the present situation, but also in terms of future enrollment and other things. And I would just encourage, Alan, I know you have limited time left as the interim president, but in terms of our new interim president, I would just encourage that you and that person get out in the community in service clubs and other things, and basically make the same presentation so that folks in that area, they know that they will know that Frostburg is healthy and is in a position to thrive going forward. I think that's really important. Some of the rumors I've heard in Washington County, which is 70 miles from the campus, are crazy, and I can only imagine the stuff that's going on in Allegheny County and Garrett County. So I just think that would be very important to get out and do that. So
thank you. It is, and I've started to do that. Have been doing that actually for quite some time. In fact, I relayed one anecdote. As you might imagine, reporters call to find out what's going on at Frostburg, how bad is it, and so forth. I did 3 interviews over the course of a week, about 3 weeks ago, and ran through much of what I did this morning with the Board of Regents here. And it was interesting to me that all 3 reporters had exactly the same quote as I went through this. Wow, really? Because that's when you get to know the facts and the process. And I want to add, this is a tragedy for those 7 faculty members who are going to lose their positions. And we're hoping still to be able to save some of those. But in terms of the good of the institution, I don't believe that we had any choice.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Al.
Thank you.
This was hard. Next, we're going to get an update from the HIDA Task Force, which was chaired by Regent Andy Smerick. And although your agenda said it was an action item, it is an information item. And so, Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As everyone will remember, toward the end of last year, Chair Gooden established the short-term work group to review our policies related to HIDA, which is the legislative flexibility and authority that's designed to help entities like our campus advance economic development and similar state interests. Our charge as a task force work group was to evaluate our USM policies and our institution's use of the flexibility, just to ensure that the implementation was aligned with the state's goals and best practices more broadly. What we are presenting today to the board are draft recommendations for adjusting our policies. They are for the board's consideration at this point. We expect a return later this year with a final proposal, and a full explanation of the suggested changes is in the board book. I want to just end here by thanking Ellen and her team for all of their work on this, as well as Chair Gooden, the Chancellor, members of the work group, Regents Breslin, Fish, Ganella, Seibel, and former Regent Bobby Neal. So now I can turn it over to Ellen. Again, thank you for all of your work and your team, and she can answer any questions, but also explain the process, the consultation, and the recommended amendments that we're putting forward. Thank you again.
Thank you, Regent Smerick, for your leadership, as well as the wise advice and counsel from the other regents who have been on the task force. Again, this is for information, and you have material in your books, so I'm just going to highlight a few things. The staff actually started looking at the HIDA policy more than 6 months ago, and we're starting to formulate some ideas that we intended to recommend to the regents when Chair Gooden set up the task force, so that came at an auspicious time. We were looking at it because this policy is several years old, and the board has reminded the staff on many occasions that we need to look at board policies on a regular basis, and we hadn't looked at this one in quite some time. The other reason we looked at this one at the time was while it was intended to help the universities by providing some additional flexibility in creating additional economic activity that they wouldn't otherwise have been able to do, it really wasn't used very often by the universities. So that caused us to want to look at the policy and look at what changes might be helpful to the university. What we're bringing forward to you today is really step one of a two-step process, and here I'm going to shout out my colleague, Vice Chancellor Masucci, who is responsible for research and economic development across the system. And she also has the leadership of implementation at the USM strategic plan level for the economic development and research goals in that plan. And so as part of her ongoing work in that area, I will join with her to come back to this board, probably in the fall, with any recommendations for the board's consideration in terms of ways to continue supporting innovation and entrepreneurship and additional economic development activity through the universities. So what this report is about is some recommendations, and we wanted to give everybody time to consider them before coming back and asking for a vote from the board. Really, what we're recommending are clarifications, some additional accountability measures, some additional transparency measures. So one thing we're recommending to become a HIDA, recognized as a HIDA entity by the system, you have to meet certain criteria, one of which has to do with cost savings. And so one of the things we're recommending is clarifying what counts as cost savings. In particular, we want to emphasize benefits of growth rather than necessarily cost reductions due to downsizing of state costs. We are recommending in our annual report to the BPW and legislative committees, which we already do, required by law around HIDA activities, that we include more detail around funding sources, benefits, and the Regents' assessment of how each activity serves the state's interests. We have a number of other policies that have audit requirement thresholds in them, and we're recommending we align this policy with our other policies around thresholds for what types of audit have to be performed for what size entities. And then we are recommending the removal of an authority that granted non-competitive procurement authority to HIDAs. We think that consistency and transparency in our procurement practices serves us best, so we are recommending the removal of what had been in there. Those are the highlights. Again, your materials have a lot of detail in them, and I guess what we're asking for, Regents Merrick, is everybody think about this and be prepared when we come back to the board later in the year and ask for a vote on these measures, and also ask for any input you might have at this time.
Chancellor Perman.
I'm appreciative of all of this work, Regent Merrick, and certainly the gang at the Chancellor's office. I'd like to make sure that in particular the presidents don't misinterpret what's being done here. More than ever now, we need to be entrepreneurial and innovative in finding ways to generate revenue. Certainly within the rules, of course, but I wouldn't want this look to suggest that, you know, the best calls I get is when you all call me and say, Jay, I've got an idea. Keep them coming.
Andy?
No, thank you for all that. Just to underscore that point, I just want to say, like, in our first meeting when we got together, this was probably the first 15, 20 minutes of our conversation, which is, yes, we want to make sure there is accountability and transparency for all of the work we do, but we also want to make sure in this kind of environment that we're giving our presidents and their teams as much flexibility, the space, the green space, Skunk Works opportunities to do things that are innovative. And so all of our conversations were based around this idea, is this kind of authority and flexibility helpful, or would something else be helpful in the context of accountability? So thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Ellen.
And if I could just put a finer point on it to the presidents. So what we'll be asking of you through the spring and summer is we'll be reaching out to you and your research and economic development folks and ask, what more do you need, from the Regents. So we ask, and I ask on behalf of my colleague, Vice Chancellor Masucci, that when we ask that question, we have some good answers coming back that we can recommend to the board.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Andy, for agreeing to chair. And now we'll move on for another informational update from our Strategic Communications Work Group. Regent Godnella will introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're running a little late, so I will try to be as brief as possible, but I do have video. So just quickly, on behalf of the Strategic Communications Work Group, and the Chancellor already alluded to this, I'm pleased to update the board by announcing that we have officially launched our branding campaign for the good of Maryland with the tagline that the Chancellor teased, let's change the world for good. And just briefly wanted to talk a little bit about the campaign and then share some of the materials. As the Chancellor mentioned, the goal here is to create more awareness about the USM as a force for good and an agent of change in the state of Maryland and across the nation. Who we are, what we do, and why it matters. And certainly strengthening our reputation as a leading system in higher education in Maryland and beyond, and really focus on the value of higher education. And as has also been referenced earlier today, doing a better job of telling our story and aligning that storytelling with the goals in Vision 2030 to achieve greater influence. So the goal, pretty simple, as I mentioned, to elevate the USM, our reputation, position as a natural leader, and using those messages developed through research. This has been many years in the making and dates back to even Michael's predecessor. So I want to first thank Michael for his tremendous work in leading us through this and getting us to this point. I also want to acknowledge Ellen and Tim McDonough, who served in this role before, and all of the presidents and all of the members of the work group who really helped us to get here. But we're working to make a tangible impact on the state, trying to provide examples of this opportunity, empowering students and the research showing how we can reach its fullest potential, and tackling those problems and opportunities that is the essence of a student-centric system. Certainly the audiences are key here. Why are we doing this? Certainly prospective students and parents, policymakers and influencers. Certainly Annapolis is always, as is Capitol Hill and our nation's capital. But the public in Maryland, again, increasing awareness, enhancing the reputation, enhancing the brand, and talking about how we are a solution and the value of higher education, and then peer institutions. Our hope is, and we're working with a firm, BVK, who does a lot of work in this space around the country, and I think their hope, and ours as well, is that this becomes a model for other institutions around the country to invest in this type of branding activity to increase the number of voices, to make them broader and more diverse, and to really have greater impact. So, quickly, a couple of the collaterals that have been produced and that are out there. As a couple of regents have pointed out, we're not necessarily the demographic that this is going to, so you all may not have seen this yet. It is heavily a social media focused effort. But the thing couple of things we're going to share with you. First, this is the anthem video that is a broad description and reflective of the larger campaign.
When the world feels uncertain, the people of Maryland turn to what they can depend on. A steady presence, a supportive community, and a path to a better tomorrow. From providing accessible, affordable education to developing a workforce that will solve our greatest challenges, the University System of Maryland prepares the brilliant minds of tomorrow by educating the very best of Maryland today.
Quick radio spot.
Whoop. This one doesn't seem, there we go. Whoop.
Very quick.
we seem to be having.
In every corner of the state, the University System of Maryland opens doors to affordable education, preparing tomorrow's leaders today. Our universities and regional centers are a force for progress, inspiring students and faculty to tackle the world's toughest challenges. Together, we're driving innovation, empowering our communities, and building a stronger Maryland, one breakthrough at a time. Let's change the world for good.
So you can get a sense of both the concept and the theme, and certainly the social media aspect of this is key. Maybe we can just go to the. So these are examples. One of the things that we're building is a catalog of stories. The storytelling is going to be critical to this effort. We've got a number of those that we are utilizing for videos and other print ads, and our goal will be to continue to build that catalog from the other institutions as this effort goes forward. At the moment, it's a 3-year campaign, and we will continue to change and evolve over that time.
Just a little bit of a sample of where we are spending our money. You'll see a different a pie chart that shows the different areas where we've put money into an ad buy, and we're already seeing really great results in our second week in market. So I think it's been very effective so far.
And I'll just close to say that this has been a very collaborative process with all of the institutions, and I thank the presidents for their leadership and commitment and engagement. I thank all of the communications teams from each of the institutions, a number of which were part of the work group. But the intent here is to create an overarching brand for the system, not to compete with or get in the way of the individual institutions' branding and marketing efforts, but hopefully to integrate and to be a resource, and for some of the institutions potentially to co-brand some of their efforts with these efforts. So it is designed to be very flexible, but it was very important to us from the beginning not to compete or to distract or to get in the way of the individual institutions' marketing and branding efforts, but rather to enhance and to be a resource for them. So with that, happy to take any questions or thoughts, but that would conclude our report.
Hugh?
I just have a comment first, and Jeff, terrific for your team, and the creative that's been done is just awesome from the folks that we hired to do that. But I just want to make a comment that most of you know I was a broadcaster, and in my 40-some year career in broadcasting, and we dealt with all kinds of businesses that had branding campaigns and such. And I can tell you, I never met anyone in that business who launched a campaign that ever said they had more than enough money for their branding exercise from a media plan perspective. And I can assure you that it's the case here as well. So my plea is following up, and I have an ask of the presidents, and that's to follow up, Jeff's comments. If we're really going to leverage the branding power that we have with this campaign, I just want to ask the presidents to encourage your marketing teams to integrate some of the materials, if possible, into your own campaigns, not replace them, but to integrate some of the materials and things that we have, because that will help leverage our branding across the entire state, and it would be very powerful if that can happen. So that's my ask.
Regent Breslin, if I could just make one comment about that. A couple weeks ago, right before we launched the campaign, we had a terrific meeting with the communications and marketing colleagues from all of the campuses. They were very enthusiastic about our campaign. I think everybody understands our job is not to take over their campaigns or their brands, but to support them. And I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for co-branding.
Hugh?
Actually, two questions. What's the total budget for this over the 3 years? It's an excellent campaign. And the second thing is, you said we hadn't done this. I don't know exactly how you phrased it, but have we ever done this before? Or is this is a unique program we're doing for the first time?
Yeah.
Well, as I understand it, and as I was told, this is the first time. Okay. We have certainly done some of the research and some of the messaging that is part of this. But in terms of a external facing branding campaign, my understanding is this is the first time that we have done this.
And what was the 3-year budget for this?
Well, as you would do if you were in my situation, I'd ask Ellen.
I actually have that figure.
But Michael probably knows.
So the overall budget for the total contract is just under $1.2 million. We've spent about $645,000 so far. In terms of marketing, that's a very small budget, especially when I spoke with my colleagues on the campuses. That's, you know, advertising is very expensive, and where we're being strategic. We are using digital ads, social media, using streaming content to really try to target people throughout the state, in the district, and in the DMV area.
Thank you, Michael.
Ike?
Given the conversation that we've had this morning about the challenges financially that the system faces, we need to demonstrate at some point the return of investment on this, because I think this would be crucial to that as a response back from those who may see this and understand that we're spending 1.2, whatever that means. And as you indicated, that's a relatively small amount. But given what we've heard today and what we've just heard from Frostburg and everywhere else throughout the system, that may be a daunting number to some, but we have to demonstrate clearly that the return on investment in here is well worthwhile.
That's a perfect segue. We are sunsetting the original group, and we're standing up a new one that Jeff has agreed to also lead, that is focused on just that, the return on investment, monitoring, and ensuring that there is value in this.
Well, and I just mentioned two things. I mean, you're, as always, spot on.
Yeah.
Two things. One of the benefits of having this campaign be social media focused is the ability to monitor exactly that on an ongoing basis. So we're actually going to be tracking this sort of on a every couple of week process, so that we can understand the number of impressions, the number of click-throughs, the amount of time that people are spending on this, and we'll have real KPIs and metrics to be able to share with everybody on the actual impact that the campaign is having. We also, as part of the design of this, did a more robust opinion polling around a lot of these topics, and the goal will be at the completion of this campaign to be able to do the exact same type of opinion polling so that we can gauge the positive impact that we've had on those impressions in those audiences as a result of the campaign. So we're going to try to do it from multiple angles, and I think it's also important to note that that budget is over a multi-year period. I mean, this has been a 3-year effort and activity, as well as part of the preparation. So I appreciate that, and we'll report back those metrics as they happen.
So we'll expect to hear back in the June timeframe. And
I just had one question. How granular is your targeting? I mean, when you say you've got this social media campaign, how are you targeting? How did you come up with your universe? I guess that's my question.
Michael, you want to tackle that one? Because I would love to have the BVK folks here to give you the detail of it. But
so our goal is really to focus on Maryland. I mean, this isn't a national campaign. We are focusing, I think you saw the groups earlier, we're focusing largely on students, parents, legislators, influencers, and the general public. So we're in every county in Maryland. We are using our tools to reach people also in the district as well, but it's really focused on Maryland.
The reason I asked is because it's such an outstanding campaign. Boy, oh boy, this could have be a national template. I really do like it.
It would be. I just getting back to the earlier question about results. We've been in market now for 2 weeks. We got a report initially from the first week where already through social media we've had almost 500,000 impressions. Our click-through rate is well above the benchmark rate. Through YouTube, we're seeing that people are watching our videos to almost 70% of the time, which is remarkable. And then just through our ad spend in the Washington Post, in our first week we had 50,000 impressions, which is really strong. And those are just a sample of some of the places where we're seeing our impact. Overall, the numbers have been very positive.
Regent Leggett, does that answer your question?
Yes,
yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Mike. And thank the committee for a job very well done. Finally, our last item on today's public agenda is an update on the meet and confer process. The system supports meet and confer as a means by which graduate assistants can formally discuss and resolve issues with their university administrators. As part of our commitment to improving the experience of our graduate students, including our graduate assistants, the board will establish a work group to recommend ways we strengthen meet and confer across the USM. I've asked Regent Lewis to chair the work group, and we'll update you on the full membership and charter in a subsequent meeting. Chancellor Perman, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have much more to add to your words, but you all know I'm a shameless enthusiast for the meet and confer process. I haven't been subtle about that. Why? Because I remember how it worked, and thank you, Bruce, for continuing it, when I was president at UMB. I thought, and more importantly, the students thought, the elected representatives of the students thought, that it was very effective for graduate and professional students. And it was effective for us. It helped us resolve issues that graduate assistants so often bring up. And so I'm happy to add to what you've said that we're not starting from scratch by any means. My group and I have been engaged with the student councils, graduate student representatives, elected representatives of the students, to, yes, improve our meet and confer process, to develop a more effective meet and confer process, recognizing that the institutions have differences in the way they need to approach this. But it's got to be effective. We have to be accountable. It's got to be a mutual process. And I'm happy to, again, I didn't expect to say this much, but I'm happy to report that we've had some very good discussions with the elected representatives of the student. I know one of them is here. Jessica, thank you. UMBC, graduate student. And they are promising soon, and I'm sure I'll have it soon, what they might see, what the graduate assistants might see as an effective meet and confer process. So, Regent Lewis, I'm looking forward to working with you. This is all about making the academic experience of graduate assistants, graduate students, as rich as it might be, and also that they have a quality of life that they value as they study in our environments. So, more to come.
More to come. Which brings us to the close of today's meeting. Before we close the meeting, I just have to note, we are fortunate to live in a state that values higher ed and the value of everyone. I want to wish, in that light, I want to wish everyone a happy Black History Month. We are halfway through February, the month in which our country formally highlights and reflects on the impressive accomplishments and resilience of African Americans as part of the larger tapestry of American history. As I do each year, I encourage everyone to look at the program offerings at all of our universities and in our communities, and when possible, to take a part in the celebrations and the educational experiences. The Open Meetings Act permits public bodies to close their meetings to the public circumstances that are outlined in 3-305 of the Act, and to carry out administrative functions exempted by 3-103 of the Act. The Board of Regents will now vote to reconvene in closed session. The agenda for the public meeting today includes a written statement with a citation of the legal authority and reasons for closing the meeting, and a listing of the topics to be discussed. The statement has been provided to the regions and is posted on the USM's website. Do I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the meeting is closed. And the closed session will be in 312 down the hall. And we will begin promptly at noon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Madam Chair.